I wanted to start us off with some of my favourite facts about Alan Smith. Because I remember talking about these in the fitness group that we're on. So, number one, Alan Smith uses pepper spray to season his meat. Number two, Alan Smith plays Jenga with Stonehenge. Number three, Alan Smith is able to slam a revolving door. Number four, Mission Impossible was originally set at Alan Smith's house. And the final one, when James Braidwood passed recruit training, he was given the Alan Smith Award, which has got to be my favourite.
This is just revenge, isn't it, for my debrief of the UK
Yeah.
team out, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was your fault for winning everything. And then I remember when that you were listing off some of the things you were going to compete in over there, some of the events, and you mentioned pole vault. Was it pole vault? Yeah. And I was like, oh, dude, that one seems super tricky. Like, just please be careful. And then lo and behold, you drop a few photos in there. You're like, oh, no, I used to do this, blah, 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 blah. But me and John Gregory are like, oh, for God's sake. Of course he did.
But I ended up not doing the pole vault. Yeah, that was the one I
Athletic
did.
bloody endeavour, kicking ass and taking names. When did you join the fire service?
It was end of September 1985. So I'm
1980.
just going to come up to my 40th year.
40th year. So you would have been 24, 25?
Yeah, I was 24.
24. What was the age brackets back then? What was sort of selection like? Like, how did you get in?
Yeah, it took me 3 years of just writing to get in, just sending letters saying I'd like to apply, and them saying, well, we haven't got any spaces, try again next year. And then they accepted me for a 2-week induction course, and it was a new thing they were sort of trying, and not a 2-week, a weekend induction course. And yeah, I went up for 2 days, and yeah, it nearly destroyed me, gotta say. And it was really harsh. Yeah, there was like, I think we started with 50 people in a room, and you did your written exam. Then they called out names, and they all left the room. And then the guy to the rest of us said, oh, I'm sorry to say that you've actually passed to the next bit. So yeah, good old fire service sense of humour. And then over the 2 days, if at any point there was, I think 16 of us left for the 2 days doing practical bits, and if at any point they didn't think you were going to make the mark, they just pulled you out and sent you home. And at the end of the first day, there was 5 of us left.
Wow.
And they actually let us home early because we were supposed to do marching, and there wasn't enough of us for a formation, so they said we could go home and then come back. And I remember at 24, at that time, I was pretty fit. I had a good aerobic.
Unlike now.
I wasn't as strong as I am now, but I had an aerobic engine on me, and I could keep going. I remember going home absolutely destroyed physically, thinking, and getting up in the morning thinking, if the 12-week recruits course like this, I don't even know if I'd make it. So yeah, so we did all sorts on those 2 days.
So what was involved in the 2 days?
First was a physical where you had to do something like minimum 10. You had to do your maximum in a minute, but you had to do sort of minute 10 pull-ups, so many press-ups, so many sit-ups, things like that. You had to
Do you remember the numbers? Was it based on, because some of the airports still do this. I think it was 50 press-ups in a minute and 50 sit-ups.
I can't remember. Yeah, I can just remember that I had to go for it. I do remember that on the physical, you had to have a 36-inch minimum chest and a 2-inch minimum expansion. And I had to wear, at the time, because I was a bit of a racing snake, I had to wear my thickest jumper to make the 36-inch.
Weird, because I tend to think back then.
Yeah,
because you've got this image of a station manager measuring some young lady's chest, and I'm like, I just can't see us. I mean, aside from the fact, I always have to remember that we have members of the public listening that aren't members of the fire service. So this was theoretically to do with your lung capacity, wasn't it? That is, I think, was their excuse. So they were trying to make sure you had a certain lung capacity, more than 9 litres or something, I think they based it on, I can't remember, so that you would be able to be efficient enough wearing breathing apparatus or whatever. I see you weren't going to suck the bottle, but I don't really know. But yeah, they used to measure your chest. So it was, you breathe out as much as you can, and then it's from, is it 36 in total, or was it 36 difference? No, it was 36.
No, it was 2-inch difference. Yeah, so it was 36 inch and then to a 38 inch, yeah, or whatever.
That's weird, isn't it? So weird.
Yeah, so it was.
So there was that.
You had to be 5'6" in height, and I do know some that walk lifts to make that 5'6" in the day.
That one made sense because back then you couldn't drop the back of the fire engine. So the
No,
idea was we wanted you all to be an average height for manual handling, so that all four people on the ladder with the 13.5 were, there was no huge discrepancy. You could get it off safely and all that sort of jazz. I think they've dropped that altogether now. I've seen some funny social memes. Not fun, not well, it is funny, but it's like there's some really, really short lady somewhere and a really, really tall bloke in
yes,
the UK Fire and Rescue Service, and they took that photo, didn't they? And she's like, she must only be 5 foot.
if she's 5 foot, I'm not even sure. Yeah, but yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, and I think they pitched her against some 6'5" person.
You've got to imagine there would still be a lower one though, because even like the BA set, it wouldn't sit very well on your back if you were so small, would it?
Well, I don't know how they adapt. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Now is for the employer to adapt to the person.
Yeah. You got a provision of work to give that person the correct equipment, but
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be weird giving them some tiny little bottle or something like that. Do you think it'll come a point where like I'm going off down a rabbit hole? You'll have to excuse my ADHD, but like where we've got like we've learned how to compress air because we must have already. Because you think about like when people go into space, we must already have some. I mean, I know we have. I'm being stupid here, but like some incredible oxygen efficiency compression stuff where you could compress like 30 minutes of breathable air, and then you've got like 7-stage reducer or something like that, and it just clips on your belt or something like that. You know, I've got this like
But, yeah,
Star
no,
Wars.
go for it because because everything science fiction will come to pass. So
Yes.
what you can imagine will happen.
You remember in Star Wars where they go underwater and they
Yeah,
just put that thing in their mouth
that's
and they
it.
can
Yeah,
swim underwater. I think
yeah.
it'll be like that, We'll be able to go
Well,
into these fires and we'll just put the mask on. There'll be no bottle at all, and it'll just turn it into
I
breathable
remember in Star Trek when the doors used to open automatically. For me, that was science fiction.
air. Well, the old
Doors,
on the chest,
doors never used to
you
open
know,
automatically, but
you
they do
used to send
now.
messages like that, and that's how we're doing it now.
Yeah.
It's all crazy. I think the one thing we haven't quite mastered is hoverboards, although we have, but they never really took off, did they? If you excuse the pun,
Yes.
that's accidental pun.
Yeah, they need. I mean, that make mud rescue is brilliant on that. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we've always been trying to get a hovercraft down at Southsea. We pushed for one,
yeah,
it didn't go
definitely.
for. Yeah, they've not quite gone for the.
So, take me back to you did the chest expansion. We did press ups and sit ups in a minute.
Uh,
What would happen after these 2 days? There was 5 of you left.
yeah, you'd do your ladder, go up, and you'd have to take the leg lock and lean backwards and look down to show you weren't afraid of heights. They put you in a BA chamber and a rat run, and it basically made it pitch black, and you had to find your way at the rat run. And it was quite tricky because I remember the end bit was there wasn't a hole at the end, and it had barrels in, and you had to shift the barrels to find the hatch that was above you to come out. And then as soon as you came out, they'd go name 10 breeds of dog, and that was like the thing. And then we did an assault course. I remember we took a log over an assault course, with the 5 of us because they were just doing teamwork. And we also had to assemble a coupling from a drawing, so they gave you all the bits of a female coupling, and you had to assemble with the springs and the right way round clips and everything like that.
So the old dexterity test that then
Yeah, you
turned.
were given a certain amount of time to assemble that. And then right at the end, you had an interview, which for me was like the most amazing interview I've ever sat through. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced in my life, I think, because I had two officers in front of me. One was HR, one was the senior training officer. There was another officer, and I had another training officer sat to my left, slightly out of my view. And they started talking to me, the HR guy, and all friendly and everything nice. And I was answering him, and I was only about 5 minutes into the interview when the officer in uniform said, "Right, I'm going to stop you right there. At the start of this weekend, you were told that you had to address everyone as sir. You're not doing it. I need you to start now. And they were saying, okay, step back. And it's really weird. Imagine if we're having a conversation and every time I finish, I have to say, sir. It's not a natural form of talking.
Well, it's the way I was raised, and I still do it now. But then people tell you off because they're like, "Oh, that's sexist, that's misogynist, that's what." I'm like, no, it's a term of respect.
Yes,
You know,
yeah, is
I'm
it?
not asking you to do it, but you don't have to tell me not to do it. I like to. If I meet, I won't meet a police officer. I say sir or mom.
Yes,
You
but
know.
I would have to punctuate every end of sentence with sir. Yeah, and so that put me on. And then every time I answered, they flipped it into, they said, right, why are you joining the fire service? Or you're joining the fire service just for pay. And I said, well, I'm not, because I'm actually taking a pay cut, because I was taking a pay cut to join the fire service, but I'm hoping it's through a progression. And then they said, so you're joining it for the time off. And they kept me going, like, it was really aggressive. And then all of a sudden, the guy to my left, he said, excuse me, are you deaf in your left ear? Of course, I said, pardon? And I said, well, I'm tone deaf, but I'm not deaf as in I can't hear. And he said, well, I've noticed every time you answer a question or you're being asked a question, you lean to one side and it looks like you're trying to hear through a good ear. Anyway, by the time I'd finished the interview, that was it. I thought I'd blown the whole lot. I went home and said, well, I thought I was doing all right, but the interview, I've just blown it. They hated me. And it's like, but thinking back, I think all they're doing was piling pressure on you just to see how you handle pressure. If you could actually still communicate, think, when they were just loading a load of absurd sort of accusations and things at you. But yeah, still the
How do you
weirdest.
think that's changed from how we do it now? Is there anything you think, like even the sir thing? Do you think we should have kept that? Do you think it's, is it necessary? Is it unnecessary? I don't.
Yeah, that's a really hard question, I think, because the world has changed. I mean, I liked it because it was of my time. Discipline was still a big thing, I think. But I think as it goes, people were taught differently. Different generations were taught differently. Generations were taught to question. Generations were taught to, we didn't really question. We got on with it.
I think it's healthy to question things.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's healthy.
I'm the serial.
But I don't think there's the ingrained discipline throughout the new generation. So whether it's still right to enforce that on a generation that has no understanding or concept of that,
I think there's a difference between enforcing discipline and encouraging self-discipline. Because I always say the more disciplined you are on yourself, the less disciplined life has to be on you. Because if you don't impose discipline on yourself, life will impose discipline because you'll not succeed at the things you want to succeed at. You'll miss out on a lot of opportunities because you're holding yourself to such a low standard.
Yeah, for
that because otherwise we just drop the pass markers on. I'm not saying it's easier for recruits to get in now, but I just mean in life in general, like even for doctors, universities and stuff like that, the pass marks are quite low. And I'm not saying they're stupid. These are academics far more intelligent than me, but I think you fall to the level of your training. Not everyone rises to the occasion, to be honest with you. They just don't, and then when they don't, you can't really blame them because you've held them to a low standard. Like when you were doing your training, what sort of, because you were still the cork helmets, rubber slicks, rubber boots sort of days, you were still doing fireman's carries, weren't you, as they were then?
Yes, yeah, that was one of the things that we had to do on that weekend. And yeah, I fell apart. Well, I didn't fall apart. I got the bum deal because you had to carry someone of your equal, and the next person to me was 6'5" and about 220 pounds or 230 pounds, and so I had to carry him, and he had to carry me, and this happened also all through your recruits course when you did your carry downs, and I don't even know how I did those now because when you do the one that's braced from the sill, that's pretty much a single leg deadlift on your outside leg to lift you up with your mate on your back and pull yourself onto the ladder. So if he's weighing 220 plus all your kit, you're pulling up quite a bit on one leg while you try and get your other leg over the sill and onto the side.
So was anyone rigged in a harness back then?
Yeah, we had Everest devices. So it was basically a belt that went round you, and I mean not the person carrying. The person carrying was you're responsible for holding on to the ladder. In case you dropped your mate, he was attached to a belt that was attached to an Everest device, which was a self-arrest device. So if he dropped, the Everest device would allow him to come down slowly.
Yeah.
No one ever tested it.
Yeah.
I knew if
It's crazy, isn't
or
it?
knew if it worked or not. But yeah, and they say you on the ladder, if they sort of knocked you off, you were just responsible for holding on the ladder.
So it was still over the shoulder then. It wasn't over the knee. It wasn't pressed against the ladder. This was.
No, you lifted them into a fireman's lift, and then you stood on the sill, which was the easier one. If you could climb onto the sill, and then you turn around onto the ladder. Otherwise, you had to straddle the sill, and then that involved that one leg deadlift off the sill and get the leg out and down the ladder.
That is a heavy old lift, isn't it?
Yes.
That's not messing about.
It could be, yeah. But it's still a very efficient. I think we had that down as one of our lessons about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I still think that carry downs, they shouldn't have got rid. They should have left you to do your own risk assessment. That if you could manage it, then why not do it? If I was picking up a 10-year-old boy to put on my shoulder and carry that, and that would be much more efficient than the way that we have it at the moment to try and slide them down a ladder in front of me. Just pick them up. And but again, if it was a bariatric person, that's never going to happen. I mean, we can all risk assess those. So I think some of these things could have been taught rather than just completely, we can't do that now.
Mm.
This is a method, but you can only do it within.
But then it does unknowingly start to become a little bit elitist, because me and you, our physical risk assessments would be slightly different than someone of a different size or a different variation, and they would have their equal strength in other areas.
Yeah.
But that's why I always say, treat everybody equally, but don't treat them the same. Yeah. Because we're all different.
We're going to have
all got different strengths.
Because that would be exactly the same as saying, well, we can't put anyone through a small window because the biggest ones can't go through the small window.
Exactly.
That doesn't work, does it? Because you pick the person right for the job. If you've got
Be careful with that common sense, Alan. Be careful with that common sense, brother. Remember where we are.
Yeah. And I shouldn't say that because the next thing we'll find that we can't go through small windows.
Yeah, God. So talk to me about the PPE back then.
Yes. Well, as I say, we were issued with a cork helmet, plastic leggings, just welly boots really, and I did have a Nomex. I didn't have the woolen tops, which just gone to the single-breasted Nomex that was short. But yeah, the amazing thing was that we had to iron our plastic leggings and put a crease down the middle and the back.
Nice.
That was all a little bit weird, and you had to clean them with soap and and I suppose. Yeah, that's the thing. They did get cleaned because the last thing you did at the end of the day on station was you cleaned your kit. So you made sure your leggings were clean, your jacket was clean, your boots were clean. And that's the other thing. We had to polish plastic rubber boots. Yeah. So we had to pull them up and have them polished. So,
Were you still repainting helmets then?
We were still painting helmets. Yeah, you had things. So if they got scuffed or marked, then you got helmet paint and painted the whole helmet and got a new sticker for it. Yeah.
That's always surreal for people to think about now, repainting your helmets.
Yeah.
So what was your first interaction with firefighting? What was your breathing apparatus course like when you got in? And also, what was basic training like? Because I led basic training for a couple of years in training.
Wow.
And I think to myself, what elements have I actually ever used in anger? So let's kind of go through what things did you learn in your core skills, as it's known as basic training in different areas, and which have you never used as an operational firefighter in 40 years?
Well, most of our core skills were those. It was ladders, pumping, knots and lines.
Yeah.
We didn't do a lot of extrication then. We didn't have the tools to do, so it was over and over. But I've got to say that you didn't learn a lot at the recruits course. You just got beasted a lot. It was like my first ladder drill was they stood you behind the pump, 4 of you, never touched a ladder before in their life, never knew what a ram was, let alone stringers and anything like that. And they read out as by numbers, and it was get to work, and we had to do it 100 mile an hour, having no clue what we're doing, and then they just shouted at us continuously until we
chickens. Yeah.
got it, some sort of semblance of doing it right. Yeah, it was again, that was very weird to me, because I come from where I'm about encouraging people, trying to get the best out of people. They were just there to beast people. I think it was, it wasn't a best learning environment experience. And a lot of the stuff that they had, we did hydraulics, building construction, things like that. I'd done my apprenticeship when I left school in aircraft engineering, and part of that was about hydraulics systems and things like that. And they would tell us about hydraulics with water and things like that, and it used to be come in with the overhead projector and all the slides, put it on the table and go through it. And it would always start with, I have to apologise now, this isn't my subject. And then they would be teaching you this stuff from the overhead projector, and I'd be thinking, no, that's not right, that's not how that works. And so because we were a residential course, when we went back to our rooms, I'd tell them how hydraulics worked. We'd learn in the evening rather than learn during the course, some of it. And a lot of it was done in the evenings because we were staying over, and that was probably a good part of it. Experience. 12 weeks. Yeah, 12 weeks. And then I finished just before Christmas, because I was at end of September, so I was October, November, December. Finished for Christmas, then went back, did my 2 weeks BA course, and then I joined my station after the 2-week BA course.
What was included in your BA course?
That was all just standard search procedures, and yeah, that was it. I mean, we didn't really have communications. I mean, we did line communication, so you'd learn how to do that, but we didn't have thermal imaging cameras, so it was basically going on. But a lot of it was live fire. I remember they would do the progression of the fire. They just took us into a room, no BA, lit a fire in the corner while we all sat on the floor in our plastic leggings and helmets, and we watched the progression of the fire until it came to a point where we had to put our noses on the floor to breathe the air that was available to us on the floor, and then one at a time would crawl out the door. If you were the furthest from the door, you had to wait a bit to come out the door. And then later on, they had the smoke in there. While the smoke was in there, they'd have pieces of equipment. So this is without BA again. They'd open the door, you'd have to crawl in, find a piece of fire brigade equipment and bring it out, give it to the instructor, crawling around on the floor with your nose. So, because they were trying to teach you how to move without your BA, and then you did your BA on top. And the BA was through rat runs, it was through normal fires, it was just a lot of normal search procedure stuff, I think, really.
When did you first recognise breathing apparatus and stuff like that coming into use then?
I mean, we were using it on station, yeah, all the time. So, yeah, it was, well, I say all the time. We've got some stories where they still didn't use breathing apparatus per se. Car fires, bin fires, there was no BA. BA was for first pump in, and if you had a fire in a compartment. And, there's certain stories I don't tell them anymore because people call BS on it, but in only about 3 or 4 months in, we had a fire in a kitchen on the first floor in a small flat, and there was a window into the kitchen and the door was locked, and my sole officer just sent me through the window without BA into the fire, in the kitchen, to crawl through the building and open the front door for the BA team to come in.
Jesus.
So I got in, poked my head out, because we'd have those that would wear to stop the stuff going down the neck. I'd poke my head out the window, take the biggest breath I could, put my scarf around my mouth, crawled through, opened the door, fell through the door, and took the next biggest breath I could as the PA team went in the hose room. As I saw the fire just in the corner of it wasn't a big fire, but it was just in the corner of the things, and that was,
Man, that's crazy.
On my very first day, it was, I joined on nights. And I had the most remarkable start, I think, because my first night I had a bedsit fire. So 2 BA hose reel, what they call bread and butter fires. They said this would be bread and butter fire. 2BA hose reel, but outside there was a staircase about 4 floors, and my lead fireman just said, right, just go and vent up the staircase, which was full of smoke. So at every floor I was opening a window, taking a breath of air, running up to the next floor, open a window, take a breath of air, and then I could run down, hopefully all the smoke would clear. Yeah, and that was my introduction on the first night, and the second night was probably still one of the dramatic fires I've been involved in, and it was just like someone had set up a drill, 2 o'clock in the morning. We drove around both pumps, persons reported. As we came around the corner, big Victorian house, double bay, and a guy smashed himself through the front window and was hanging over the window with smoke pumping out from behind him. So we had 2 short extensions, me and the other probationer there, up there, we just pulled him out the window, and he sort of did a forward roll as we grabbed him under the armpits and lowered him to the ground. So he was being worked on CPR as the first 2 BA went in. I was put on the BA board eventually, and I had 2 BA boards. I had 10 on the first BA board, and I had another couple on another BA board alongside. And I think they made about 4 or 5 rescues, because it was a high-mo, so yeah. And I thought, oh my God, this is brilliant.
God.
This is the fire service, this is brilliant. That was my first 2 nights, bedsit fire. And
So how many people did you have on a watch then, and how many riders do we have?
we had 18. We had 18 on a watch. So we had 2 pumps, we had emergency tender, which is now rescue tenders, and we had a hydraulic platform. So, yeah.
18
but we
on a watch.
we could have 18 on a watch, but we could ride 10 as a minimum, because they would ride 4, 4, 1 and 1. They'd ride 1 person emergency tender, 1 on the hydraulic platform at the time.
So that's what people forget, because even back then it was accepted to ride 4 in certain places.
Yes, yeah, as your minimum, that's right. Yeah, and of our 18, we had a rider station officer, so when we were over, he'd ride the Romeo van. If there wasn't, he would ride on the...
So with the size of a watch when it was back then, just give us the construction. Did we have 2 leading firefighters, 1 sub-officer, 1 rider station officer? What was the makeup?
Yes, that was it. Yeah, just that. We had 2 leading firemen, 1 sub-officer and 1 rider station officer for 18. Most had a sub-officer and 2 leading firemen if you were on a 2-pump station.
So what was your probation like? Like, talk to me about mentoring and coaching and stuff like that, because mentors is still hopefully widely used across the UK Fire and Rescue Service, but how early do you think people could start mentoring? What were some of your best experiences of mentoring? And like when you went on to mentor other people, what do you think worked for you, and some of the best sort of examples of how you've seen great mentors act?
Well, I've got to say from the start, I was very lucky with the watch I landed on. They were just a tremendous watch. There was a great sense of humour on there, but they worked hard and they played hard, and it was so much fun. Also, there was so many more times that you could learn from the older guys, because they were taking you into fires and they were taking you into jobs, and you were learning from their experience. So, and of the 18, there was 3 of us when I joined that were in probation. So I had another 2 that are just like a year and 18 months in front of me. So I had that help, because they were going through it, so they could lead the way. And all the guys were really supportive, from the oldest on the watch to all the way through. And it was a very balanced watch, because we had some really old hands. And with I'd say they're 20 years in. I thought they were old at the time, and they were probably about 48.
Which is very old in a lot of people's minds, although, like you say, in the services now. Does that ever grind you now when you see people in their 40s working alongside you and they're like, Alan, feel like I'm on my arse, brother. When we joined, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, dude, I'm 20 years older than you.
But that's the thing. At the moment, they can't say a lot, because as long as I'm still moving, they've got to still move.
Yeah. Like, haven't you got that old boy, Alan, here? Well, I haven't seen him. Oh, yeah, he's outside running lengths of hose. Is he? Again? Didn't he do that this morning?
I'm probably on holiday, to be fair, if they haven't seen me for a while. But...
They say it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a whole watch to sort of raise a firefighter. So how formal and informal was the mentoring processes? Were you given one singular person, and what sort of characteristics do you think made up some of the people that you learnt most from?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I didn't have like one person assigned to me as a mentor.
So did you have a folder, or did you have your noses, or?
No, no, we had. We were working towards, because 18 months we were going to have a walk around the pump and questions, and then I think it was at 24 months you had a big drill ground exercise and that sort of thing, and it was pretty much, I think, over 3 years. That's so far along I can't remember, because I know that we all used to do our leading fireman's exam, because if you got your leading fireman's ticket, then you didn't have to do your final proficiency exam as a firefighter. We all found it easier to go for the leading fireman's ticket because you could do that earlier and you didn't have to wait for your proficiency, which I think was at 5 years. So you would go straight on to proficiency.
What would your LF exam entail?
They were the ones where you went externally, and there was like 3 stages, and you had to do, so there was the theory part, which is the external bit that you had to sit down and do those papers, and I think you could get 3 out of 5 different subjects, or you did them at different times. And then the practical was, I always called it an equity card, because you had to show up on the day and you had to act like they wanted a leading firefighter or a leading fireman to act at the time. So you took drills, and then you gave a lecture on 2 bits of equipment, I think it was. And yeah, I remember failing.
So was that when you still had to do your? Was it done in an IFCO style?
Yes, yeah, pretty much in the, yeah.
Was the drill the old? Was it Finn's WDC?
The drill was your normal drill book drill. So you had 2 drills. One was a basic one, and one was a more complicated pumps one. So one was ladders and that. So you normally got 105 or 135, and it could be any of the ladder drills, or you could, yeah, you'd then get a pump one. And they were all being done by other firefighters. So I can remember when I was going for that and we were training, my rider station officer would take me to the next station, Cotner, our neighbour station, and I would drill their crew, because you find it good doing it for another crew, and they were all incredibly old hands.
Trying to get them bouncing around. Did you have to do it in a constructive manner? I'm trying to remember. I remember when I did my similar one. It was like I think it was Finn's WDC. So it was like, get them to, you set up the drill ground and you put the cones out, and then you do fall in, identify yourself. We love our acronyms, don't we? Number off the crew, and then it was safety. So make them aware of raised ironworks and slips, trips, and falls, and then you'd brief the drill, and then you would ask any questions, confirm understanding, or something. So it was something to that effect. You had to do it in a set structure when you were numbering off the crews and detailing it.
It's very similar, but I don't think it was even as complex as that. We didn't have any cones to put out. That they weren't worried about people walking onto the drill yard. But yeah, you did have to mention that you thought that they were a competent crew, which gave you a let out that you didn't have to detail it absolutely as if they was the first time they were going to do it.
You're running a drill, you're not running a training session like acquisition of skills. This is a competent crew.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then we all had our own ways. My one was that on the ladder drill, very first start one, when I said get to work, so they're all mounted, I said get to work. They come out the ladder, we'd stand by the slip, and as they got to the back of the truck, I'd rest them, make them fall in, tell them that I'd said that I wanted them to come out with speed and urgency. So it didn't matter what speed they came out, they knew they were going to get chance to take control of the drill. Because I've seen some where the crews are so good, you give them the 105 slip and pitch to the second floor, they fly the ladder out, put it in, and you haven't even drawn a breath. And it's like, there's nothing to pick up there, because that is pretty smart. So I'm doing that, getting them out, and saying about the urgency and saying like do it. It didn't matter if they did it smart first time, next time. That was because I told them to do it in a more urgent and efficient way. So yeah, that was my
Get you marked in early.
that was my go-to.
Did you go down to the college to do your initial training, or was it done in-house?
No, ours was done in house. So and we used to do quite a few of the other services. So we had Surrey, West Sussex with us, Wiltshire. We even had someone from the Falklands. Yeah, so we had them all over. So there was only 5 Hampshire recruits, and there was a recruit course of 30, I think it was. It might have even been a bit more than that. Yeah, we had 2 squads, and yeah.
So when you'd got yourself on station, I remember when we were talking before, we were talking about the value of the mess room table. Like, I worry that that becomes a bit of a dying thing sometimes when I go to different stations, because we now live in a technological age and everyone's sat around on their phones. Like the value of the mess room table. What do you think if you were trying to sell that to somebody and describe to remember the public what it is? What is the value of the mess room table? Why is that such a central focus of a fire station?
It's a lot of things really. It's like the family dining table. It's where you catch up with people. It's where you hear their stories. It's where you talk about different things. People share ideas. It rang a bell when you said you wish there was a podcast when you were younger. The things. My podcast was the mess room table.
That's what I'm saying, brother. If you could have recorded those conversations.
The stories, and I used to cry because there were some great storytellers. And they used to tell the stories of jobs they've been to, the funny things that have happened, other bits. And you learnt so much, but it was also a therapeutic place, I think. And I put down a thing about sort of banter and bullying, because the banter and Mickey taking on the mess room table was great. It was so funny and things. But it always came from a place of respect. And that's the difference between banter and bullying. Because banter, you're probably harshest with your best mates, because you're coming from a place of respect. They know that. They're not going to get offended because they know that it's things. Where if you do it without having that foundation, then that could be offensive. That can be bullying. So I think you have to be very careful not mixing up, because you see 2 old guys going at each other, although that normally ends in just fits of laughter. If you see that, and you think I can do that to someone else, but it's not someone you know, not someone that you're familiar with, not even someone you're friendly with, then you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt. But on the mess room table, I say, luckily we had 18 people that enjoyed having a chat, having a talk. And again, it was at different times, because I joined on nights. My very first night, we finished our meal, and they went through to the Sports and Social, which is next door, the bar, and they said to me, "What are you drinking?" And I thought, this is going to be a usual. So I just said, "Well, I drink what you're drinking. What are you having?" He said, "Well, I'm having a bitter." I said, "Well, I'll have the same thing." And I came back with a pint of bitter. I sat there thinking, is this real? I'm getting paid. Yeah. And it was.
What was the makeup like for bars on station, for smoking on station? Like, how much was it? And give people an insight, because the bars were just leaving as I joined.
Yeah, no, the bars were running. Our Sports and Social was as a Sports and Social was immensely rich, mainly because we had a one-armed bandit in there. They won't do those anymore, I don't think. But there was 5 or 6 people that put through that thing would make something like $3,000 alone for the Sports and Social. It was ridiculous. The bars themselves, they could only make 10% profit, so that's why the prices were so low, and that 10% profit was spent directly back into the Sports and Social. So they were open on a Friday and a Saturday. Yeah, they were managed by. We had a bar manager who was a firefighter, and one of your duties, if you were working on a Friday or Saturday, you would have your cook's duties, you would have your duty man, and you'd have a barman. And you would be allocated as the barman, so in the evening you would go through to the bar and you sit there and you run the bar, and for anyone who came in, you'll serve them pints and drinks and socialise, and you're there until the last person left, and then you close the bar down.
I think it's such a great space for dissipating trauma, a really cathartic environment just to sit and I also think that with the size of the watches, because also I think when you got a big watch, when I've been on big watches before, it allows a watch most of the time, and it can be environments where bad habits get worsely entrenched, but often it allows the locker room to calibrate itself. And what I mean by that is, like, if you've got a watch and your minimum crew is four and it's just a single pump and there's only four of you on that day, well, if you've got one arsehole, that's 25% of your crew, and they can really drag down the rest of the team. But if you've got 18 people on a watch and you've got one or two people in a bit of a bad mood, or they're a bit negative or whatever, that can be balanced out by the rest of the watch and it can be managed a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's why I've always sort of enjoyed the bigger watches, because you're always going to find a group that you're getting on with and are getting on with stuff. And and I think a lot of watches, we were just lucky in how everything clicked, I think, at that time, and I've had it since as well with watches. But most watches are very similar in the makeup. It doesn't matter where you go in the fire service. I think you're going to find similar characters in similar spaces.
What was the scenario with cooks and cleaning and watching and cooking on station?
Yeah, so we had a watch manager who got paid. So he got paid 3 hours overtime a shift to go and buy all the food, sort out what the menu was going to be, and that was quite lucrative for the older guys, because I do remember that an older guy with long service money, which was 15 years plus, he would be on as a watch manager, as a caterer, he'd be on the same as the sub officer for what he was bringing in. And so it was quite coveted. And so whenever you managed to wind up the caterer enough that he threw the keys on the table, that was it. You'd done it, because he normally snatched them back straight away. But and catering good, and we had cooks on days. So Monday to Friday we had a cook on station, so they would cook the lunches, and if we were lucky, would load them, and they'd cook the evening meals and put them in the fridge. So we'd have lasagnas or something like that, put in the fridge, so that we didn't have to cook in the evenings as well.
What's your go-to watch meal when you're?
It's probably either chili bolognese, a lasagna, or a pasta surprise. Yeah.
Surprise is always easy and nice. I love doing that. Mine's always fajitas.
Yeah.
I love fajitas. It's idiot proof. I love it. It's finger food.
But we always used to do bolognese on first night and then chili second night, because you can always turn a bolognese into a chili, but you can't turn a chili into bolognese. So whatever's left over, yeah. And again, you learn those skills. I can remember the first day I had to cook. It was Sunday roast for 14 people. And that was it, just thrown in. And I was in the kitchen with the other probie who had joined at 18 and never knew how to cook. At least I had something, because I was married at the time with a couple of kids, so I had some idea. But catering for 14 isn't the same as cooking for 4. And I remember we had bread and butter pudding for dessert, and I had to ring no mobile phone, so I had to get the station phone and ring my mum and say, "Mum, how do you make a bread and butter pudding?" With 2 eggs. And I said, "Mum, it's for 14. And she said, "All right, okay, times it by 4. And then I think I used all the eggs from the caterer for about the tour, and he wondered where all his eggs were. And I said, "Well, that's what my mum told me."
But you know what? That's where I think you learn so many life skills in doing that sort of thing as well. Like, sometimes you'll get it now where if you ask somebody to be on kitchens and do the teas or cook for the watch, then they think it's not right, and they think it's not fair and that sort of stuff. But I think you learn so much from it. But no, I was saying that, I think when we encourage people to pick up those tasks on station, when you pick up kitchens or you pick up tea or anything like that, you learn a lot of life skills. And I think when people think that is inappropriate, or they think it's bullying, or you shouldn't be forced to cook for other people, I'm like, it's not what it's about. You know what I mean? You can get so much camaraderie from cooking for a team. And I also say, if you want to learn from these people, wet their whistle. Do you know what I mean? If they ask you to make a brew, because then you get to sit with them, and that's how you're going to learn.
Yeah, and as I say, I don't see any harm in it at all. Sometimes you just need to be outside your comfort zone to progress, don't you? So, and you normally have the support. Although, yeah, they were probably the funnest times were the meal times, and they could get quite lively depending on how busy your nights were and breakfasts were, because we'd have breakfast every morning at 8 o'clock. You'd have a full cooked breakfast.
So in our notes, when we were talking about going through learning your trade, some of the big jobs and stuff like that, we've got King's Cross, Fleur, Blainer. These were all around your era, weren't they?
Yeah. King's Cross was just before mine, before I joined, I think, and I just remember them having an impact because of her being the first female firefighter. And we didn't used to get the information as much. I've learned more about it since, but at the time, all we've heard is that firefighters have died. Blainer was a big one because I think Blainer was the push to change. It was the first time they started talking about backdrafts and flashovers and smoke explosions and trying to find out the difference. And again, having looked into that, at the time there wasn't the information is available, but just because I was interested, I sort of dug around to find out the stories and like Googled the location and looked at the looked at the road, looked at the buildings just to see, get in my head what they were dealing with, really, because as I say, it was quite a big impact. And then you also had the Bradford football ground. And I remember watching that on TV and seeing how people could die in an open-sided stand, and how quickly that sort of got involved. And yeah, so these were all around. And then the older boys were talking about other things they still had stories about, because I can't remember where the underground disaster was, where it just, the dead man switch somehow held off and it piled straight into the end of the tunnel, and the firefighters were in their days trying to tunnel their way through to get to the victims and see if there was any survivors. Because I can remember the story coming out of that was that of all the things that they needed more of, it was hacksaw blades.
Yeah.
It was the most effective thing they had at the time, was using hacksaw blades, I think, to chop the seats off and remove them.
The Fleur Lombard one was a very pertinent incident, wasn't it? I think we just went through an anniversary for that. So Fleur Lombard, for people that are unfamiliar, it was Leo's supermarket, wasn't it? She was 21 when she unfortunately passed. She was the first female firefighter to die in outside of wartime Britain. And yeah, that was sort of a flashover / backdraft. It was a big open supermarket, high roofing, heavy fire loading, and it was her and her BA partner. They took opposite directions. She went down one sort of walkway in the supermarket, and when he came back to, I think it was the kiosks at the front, or the pay stations, her BA partner emerged in the building, realised he wasn't with her, and obviously, rightfully so, tried to turn and go back and find her, but unsuccessfully. And yeah, that sent a lot of ripples. We still have the Fleur Lombard bursary. If people are unfamiliar with that, you can still apply to go overseas and bring back learnings for the UK Fire and Rescue Service through the Fleur Lombard bursary. It's actually something that's on my list to try and apply for. I've actually applied for it before, didn't get through. You ever know anyone that's done the Fleur Lombard bursary?
No. To be fair, I'd never even heard of it.
Yeah. So there's that, and then there's the Winston Churchill. There's a Churchill Fellowship, which is a similar thing that you can apply. And again, it's all about raising awareness and education and bringing knowledge back to the UK. So there's the Fleur Lombard bursary and there's the Churchill Fellowship, I think it is. There's a couple of rider station officers, or a couple of the new direct entry people, I think, have managed to get on those recently, which is fine. But no, yeah, there were big things that happened sort of around that period. What were the ripples that you saw off the back of things like that coming through your service?
The I say mainly it was Blainer, I think, and then that sort of started looking at how we were managing in fires and things like that. And then there were, of course, a lot of people talking about Paul Grimwood and his book and that. And I remember getting hold of that very early, the 3D firefighting, and being intrigued by that model. And then we sort of embraced that. And again, maybe the pendulum swung too far one way, because that became the be all end all, where it was certainly a very effective method, and it's a great thing to have. But then there was the stuff that we were still doing or had been doing that was still very effective as well, which is surprising because I've seen the pendulum coming back because they're now talking about solid bore again, aren't they? The advantages of that, and when I joined, all we had was the AWG1, the AWG2, the Hughes Noble, and it was only the Angus Fogmaster, I think, that we had on the hose rules that gave any sort of fog. And and ours was, we didn't know why we were doing it, or we knew why we were doing it, but we didn't know why it was as effective, maybe. Because we'd go in, and the old boys had always shown me that when you got to the door, you opened the door and the first thing you hit was the ceiling, because you brought the ceiling down so it didn't come down on you, because you didn't want lard and plaster over you. So you'd loosen you'd take anything loose off the ceiling and the tops, and then you'd we were sort of creating that. We're not entraining air because we've got a solid bore. We're dispersing air from the top, so we've got a low pressure high, so the smoke should be rising, and then we hit the fire hard from as far as we could, sort of thing. So it was effective.
Blaina was a massive incident. I think we're nearly 30 years on from it now. So we actually did an episode on Blaina, so people can go back and find it. This was in South Wales. So 1996, in the valley town of Blaina, South Wales, 2 firefighters. It was Kevin Lane, Stephen Griffin. 2 firefighters died, unfortunately, in this particular incident. A very interesting one. It's on the FBU's website, and we also did a big, long debrief episode solely on Blaina. But no, it was a big pivotal move because it was around the time that I think one of the harshest things that was highlighted off the back of that was that national operational guidance that didn't exist at the time for firefighting, effectively for breathing apparatus, wasn't implemented, and that the national guidance and procedures for the use of breathing apparatus were not put into practice in Blaina was, I think, the outcome of the FBU's investigation into that. The health and safety executive got involved in it, but more importantly than anything, I say the loss of life of 2 firefighters, unfortunately. But a very pivotal incident, and we think we're 30 years on now, and that's my thing as well with the podcast. Is I think I like to cover a lot of this stuff because the new generation aren't going to always go back and read books anymore. They're not going to read debriefs because that's just not the way that we learn. You need to give it to people, when we talk about that neurodiversity, give it to people in a way that they're going to be able to absorb it, so people can go back and find Blaina. And we've covered the King's Crossfire, and we've covered a variety of other incidents as debriefs, because I think it was another Churchillian style quote where it was like, sometimes we need to remember more than we need to learn. And if we fail to remember these challenges, these setbacks, these lessons learned, then we'll be doomed to repeat them, unfortunately.
Yes, and I think that's very true. We were just recently doing a walk. We had an AFA around one of the co-ops, and I looked at the type of building, and for me it looked and sounded exactly like the Leo shop, because it had, the front was done up, but it was an old building. Out the back, it had multiple rooms and warehouses and things like that. And, I said to a couple of the younger lads, this is almost exactly, I think, what Fleur Lombard would have found herself in. So can you imagine, with a fire at the back, going well and coming through the front and coming through these aisles? But I say, if you're not recognising that, or you don't know the story, then that building wouldn't look or feel any different than any other building that you might go into. It's like, we don't want to repeat any of those.
Talk to me about the change in job. How's the job changed over the course of your career?
It's got quieter job-wise. It's got more, I think I've done more road traffic incident stuff than I've done fires. Well, when I joined, we were doing a lot of fires, and down in Portsmouth, we're a densely populated area. We had the dockyard. The old boys, when I joined, said the first thing I had to learn was high-rise procedures and dockyard procedures, because that's what we do all the time. We'd go to a high-rise every day, we'd go into the dockyard. Said that they went in the dockyard every day. We went into the dockyard every tour, and we'd have a number of ship fires of different types. Most of them were small, but we would have some that were like, proper
Talk
jobs.
to people that live inland and don't know a lot about that. Talk to us about the differences in maritime firefighting and some of the things that might surprise people.
Well, ours down in Portsmouth were naval dockyards, so it's mainly naval ships, and you've got to say that the Falklands gave them a big kick up the arse for their firefighting procedures because of the ships they lost down in the Falklands, and their firefighting was coming up. So we did an awful lot of training with them, and at one point they had a written order that if their ship came into Portsmouth, they had to do an exercise with the local authority fire service. We did it pretty much every Wednesday evening. If you were on duty, you went to the dockyard and did a ship's exercise. Yeah, so it was, and it was all the fun of the fair because you're using guidelines. So people say, "Oh, have you ever used guidelines?" Well, yeah, I can say actually yes, and I used to use them loads in exercise and a few times in jobs, and they're just as we all know, just a pain in the ass. And then what used to surprise me is we used to have Warsash as the firefighting training, live fire training, and I always used to say, well, why don't we use guidelines when we're doing the training? Because we wouldn't achieve the exercises that they set if we were using a guideline. But then they expect us to take a guideline into a ship to achieve a fire with the same thing.
What do you think the
And
argument is?
I think they burned too many guidelines, probably. So, sorry, Pete.
What do you think the argument is for using guidelines on a ship for people that are unfamiliar with the complexity of it?
Yeah, I mean there is something about that because you can get turned around because floors look the same. When you've got mezzanine floors, there's so many nooks and crannies on the ships, and I say most of the ones I've been on are naval ships, from the Ark Royals to the Type 42s. And
yeah, they all look the same from compartment to compartment, don't they? You can get lost
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you've got that of just purely trying to open a ship's compartment. Sometimes, how many times do you move that lever just to get it the right way? Because they've got 12 levers on each. There's a water door. Yeah, but that used to be great fun training with the Navy, and I can remember two officers having an argument over the training because we were on an exercise once, and me and my mate, we were dry exercise, so we had our AWG1 and a length of 45, and we were making a hose, and the naval officer stopped and he said, "Where are you going with that?" And I said, "Well, we're going down the hatch." He said, "What, just with that?" And I went, yeah, we'll cool it, open the hatch, cool the ladder, down the hatch, we'll go. He said, "You'll never do that." I said, "Well, that's our procedure." And then our officer turned up and he said, "Is there a problem?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm not letting your guys go down just with that because they never do it." And our officer said, "Well, it would. Yeah, that's no things." So they had a bet whether we could or we couldn't. So they set up in Halsey Island, they had the naval live fire units. And so they said, right, on this day, we're going to go down there. They'll set a fire for us. We'll go and show them our procedure of how we put it out. When we turned up, we came past about 3 or 4 of the units smoking, and then the last one was like thrumming and almost red, and there was a guy throwing diesel through the last bit of the door. It was actually they had stoked it up for ages for us, and so we did a high level entrance from the top deck, and AWG length of 45, team at 3, and they opened the hatch, cooled the hatch, made an entry of which the naval officer, I was at BA control at that point, and the naval officer said to me, "They aren't going to last 2 minutes down there." And so there was a bit of noise down below, and then head popped up. About 2 minutes later, fire's out. And there was
a vertical entry on something like that down a cat ladder. The heat is going to be absolutely bouncing in that unit.
Oh yeah. No, I mean it was, and you didn't want to be number 3 because that's the person that got steamed because you were still probably left in the chimney effect. But they got down there, they put it out. So they said, right, okay, we'll set another exercise, but we'll have a running fire in a pan and things like that. And I said to him, "Well, shall we take the hose reel?" And he said, "What?" I said, "Well, we'll take the hose reel, it'll be easier to manage down there." And the naval guys were saying, "Well, it's a running fight, so you can't use it. I said, well, you can use a hose reel on a running fight. They said, okay, show us this then, because we only got a hose reel here to show them why you don't. And so we got our high pressure off, and this is only because we've done chip pans and done it before with chip pans. So they had the tray, and it was the first time I'd ever had a flash hood, because the Navy lads gave me a flash hood to try. So I had a flash hood, no BA, because we opened the side door, we didn't go in, we were just going to demonstrate it for them. So they had the pan at the back of the unit, and the big double doors were open, smoke was coming up, the flames were there, and they gave me a flash hood to try out. Yeah, and we went in there, got the hose reel high as we could on a big fog, and just swept it over, picked up the flames and doused it out, and suffocated it. And that was it, far out. And they were like, right, we haven't seen that before. And it was like, well, you need to have proper hose reel to do it. Yeah, and you need to have the confidence that, and you're not hitting the fire, you're suffocating, you're just taking all the air out of it, really. And then doing it enough so you can cool it.
What was it?
Yeah, so that was my first time. I can't remember when that was, because I say that was the first time I had because up to then
flash hood started coming in, people would be crazy now thinking going in flash hoods, because obviously you had the BA before you had the flash hoods.
Yeah, and that's why all your ears a little bit things up. Necks were that was all your temperature things. Yeah, you knew it. And we had this crazy, especially in the first day, you had this crazy BA dance that you would do, because you'd have your plastic leggings on and you'd have your ears exposed. So when it got really hot, you'd duck down because your ears are getting too hot. But as you ducked down, your plastic leggings got tighter over your ass, and then your ass started burning. So you'd have to go up. But then, of course, you would go up and then your ears would burn again. So you would do this bobbing action up and down, because either your ears were burning or your ass were burning.
Jesus Christ, it's crazy to think back about it, isn't it?
Yeah. But having said that, I wore, even when leather boots came in, I wore my rubber boots for years and years and years, because I couldn't wear the leathers because of the insteps. I found a real problem with them. And the only time I've burnt myself through my boot is wearing a pair of leather boots.
Really?
And that was just radiated heat. We had a big pavilion down on the seafront going, and you're standing there with a branch, and we didn't have gloves either, so hands are tucked under your tunic, virtually holding the branch, and my forward foot just burnt, the radiated heat burnt through my boot onto the top of my foot. And, that's the only time my feet have ever suffered. I say, normally it's your hands, and I say, that was the other thing, you didn't have gloves. In the early days of BA, you didn't have gloves, or if you did, you bought your own gardening gloves. So we bought those like leather yellow gardening gloves. So that's what we bought, because the plastic ones that you had, sort of thing, were like they're the ones that are still in the box, I think. They were your fire gloves until they got the sheer waters, which were those big blue things that were basically two chamois on your hands. So as soon as they got water, they just turned into these ridiculous steam in bucket gloves. But yeah.
How difficult do you think
I think it was slightly different, in that respect.
Staying engaged, staying relevant over all the period of time that you've been in, there's been so much change to procedures, to guidance, to the role map. That challenge of continuing to lean in and stay engaged and be that eternal student.
Yeah, I think that's probably, though, what's kept me engaged, because there is so much new to learn, and there is great stuff comes through. We've had a lot of fun with the old stuff, but the new stuff is just brilliant. And I've got to say, in all the changes, our uniform, our equipment, our appliances are the massive plus bonuses to the job. We're so lucky to have what we got, and I have to constantly be learning. Going through my probation, I could tell you names, facts and figures on every bit of equipment on the truck. Unfortunately, none of that equipment is now on a truck. We've upgraded everything. I can't tell you what the specifications and weights and things, but I focus more now on being able to practically use and know the limitations and know the advantages of the equipment that we can use, rather than getting weighed down with this now weighs 3.4 kilograms and that's got a reach of whatever.
I think that stuff's weird when we used to make people do F coats. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You need to know the weight and the length of something. It's just retarded. I never
Yeah.
found that to be a useful thing for a firefighter to learn.
No, and I think, as you said, I think it's also good to question the way that we do things, because we don't have to do that. And even in our training, it's like, what did I use from my recruits course? I've got to say that I've used most of the skills I learned, which were basic skills for a firefighter. Over the years you do put ladders up, but it's not frequent. It's not as much as we train on. And I would say that maybe a good exercise to do is sit down and say, what are the things that we do the most? Let's make sure we're trained on those so that we know that we can do the things that we're going to ask to do the most. But let's also make sure you're trained, because at one time you are required to do something that's extraordinary. You want to be able to know how you do that as well.
I think there's certain things that should be an initial acquisition of skills that don't belong there, and there's certain things that I think we make recruits do that has no legitimacy. Like small changes on pumping, as an example. You should be starting with the end in mind. So the first time you're moving forward with a 45 or a hose drill, you should be doing so, down on one knee and talking about hose management and talking about things like this, because otherwise you start getting ingrained behaviours that aren't going to cross over into a BA environment. You need to think about what you're going to use this tool for. Standing outside externally doing defensive firefighting with a branch, which is how we teach recruits to start with, unknowingly, is because we stand in a line and we all shuffle forwards. You know what? I could teach my daughter to do that. If you're going to stand outside a warehouse and just throw a branch in, then it doesn't really make a difference how you do it. But if you get that wrong in structural firefighting because you're so conditioned to how you learnt to manoeuvre a hose outside, that's when you're going to pay the cost, because you're not familiar with how to stay low. And then that gets into the sort of mobility conversation. When I was with some fire behaviour instructors at an event a couple of months ago, and we were doing some work with John McDonough and a few others about managing hose forwards and staying low and driving off that front leg. A lot of people, it's just a real mobility issue because they've been so conditioned to this stand-up BA shuffle that I've got a real issue with personally. And then they can't really manoeuvre in that low down position because they've got issues with their back and their knees, or they've just not stayed fit and healthy like you have. But we don't ask people to do it. We know that it's going to be the best tools when it crosses over into that structural firefighting environment.
I think, again, that's where it's harder now for the younger firefighters, because when I joined, one of the best decisions I made was not to drive, and that was influenced by some of the older guys on there, because I actually joined with my HGV and they wanted me just to do it within sort of first year, and they said no, don't. So in the end, because I was getting pressured, I let my HGV run out, because at that time every 3 years you had to renew your HGV. So, and that was the best decision I made, because when you were in the back, I had access to BA all the time. Over the year there was 4 of us that normally topped the BA charts for fires, and because of that, then you learnt all the advantages of what the old guys were showing you, that you didn't shuffle. Neutral plane is so natural to get under the neutral plane, and yet later on I've seen a lot of firefighters who are shuffling around in the neutral plane at the waist. I've been either a leading firefighter or a watch manager and looked through the door at a pair of legs walking around in smoke, where I can see straight down the hallway. Yeah. It's like down on the floor, take a look at you. It's the easy things, but because we don't get the training now, the training should have increased to take pressure off the fact that we don't get as many jobs, but it never has. And they're even now, I think I did my live fire, and they're now talking about going to every 3 years for a live fire. And I mean, that's crazy, because you don't want your first experience to be...
It's one of the most dangerous things you do. I always use the argument of the military. Like, the military train as much as, if not more than we do, and it's something like less than 12% of the military will ever actually deploy into a conflict zone and be required to do the thing that they train to do every day. Yet for us, even though fires have significantly decreased, you will still most likely have to do it once a tour, or at least once once a week or twice a week. Ironically, there should be a greater appetite for training those base level skills. Again, moving in a fire compartment, even just putting your BA set on, with real efficiency. So you have to reduce that cognitive load. You haven't got to think about these things because they become muscle memory. I think the less jobs that we have, the more training we need to do. Because actually,
Exactly.
if you
Yeah.
put that through a risk matrix, you reduce the risk by ingraining that training more and more because it then becomes second nature to them. I think our reluctance to put people into fires, and again because of the toxicology and the cancer and all that sort of stuff, the pendulum can swing too far where we develop the nervous firefighter, the timid firefighter, and that's not what you want when you're putting them into a high risk environment.
No, no, and that's again, that's some of the bit that does come down to experience, because I will risk assess things, I think, differently than some of the other if they haven't got the experience. So having been having been put through a window into a fire and gone to the front door, I'll never do that to anyone else. But I know that it is survivable. I know that you can go into a thing and you can suck air off the floor if you need to. So when I go into a building that's got fire in the back bedroom and the ground floor is completely cleared, I'm not expecting that ground floor suddenly to fill with smoke. And in the worst case scenario, yeah, okay, there's a flashover, smoke starts coming downstairs. I know how to get out if I do. But if we're in a ship, we'll operate within close confines of where the is on the same level. We're still inside. We call it clean air now. We don't call it fresh air because otherwise we'd have on the Ark Royal we'd have to start on the flight deck and make a 45-minute journey in BA to get to the seat of the fire. But so it now starts in clean air, and so very similar. You can still be walking around in clean air on the ground floor with a fire going above you, or even in the loft space, and yet we're reluctant sometimes.
I think about that same analogy when I think about staircase protection teams. Because, when we put people above the bridgehead, we have a real nervousness to do that unless they're under air. And I'm like, but they're in clean air. Do you know what I mean? They're not in fresh air, but they're in clean air, and they're protected by, a fire door, a smoke curtain, whatever. Because when you look at the Grenfell analogies and stuff like that, you should be able to put people in clean air. Your breathing apparatus is just an item of PPE at the end of the day. Like, I wouldn't tell you when to and when not to put your helmet on. I mean, if there's roof tiles falling off and you're stood outside the front door and you've not got your helmet on, I'm going to give you a nudge. But I trust you to recognise it as a form of PPE, and you're accountable to put that on when you believe it's necessary. You've been trained to do so. So have the BA on your back, but if you don't believe it's necessary for you to be under air, because your air is a limited resource, then when you see you're entering an irrespirable atmosphere or you're wearing a gas monitor or whatever, then you're going to go under air. But I'd be more than happy for you to just be on a board and then go under air when you feel it's appropriate. I'm not saying put you into a building, 2-story terrace. When you go through the front door, you should have it on because, it's not going to be a massive building, all that sort of stuff. But certainly in the example of high rises, I think those sorts of tall buildings fires, we really need to. I know the Fire Brigade Union has got a real problem with it, but I think we really need to simplify and think a little bit more about what that PPE is doing and when it's appropriate, and give that a bit of accountability to the firefighter, make sure they're trained and proficient in its use so that they can don it when they feel it's appropriate.
Yeah, I say I agree with a lot of that. It's because a lot of it is a risk assessment, and but that risk assessment has got to be backed up with experience, either through training or through practical application, so that you can make that decision. Really, I think we are more cautious. I think because we don't want to get stung.
Yeah. The safest firefighter will never enter the building, but ultimately, if our role is to save people, save property, protect the environment, then in a controlled manner, we do have to expose people to risk. And I think we've just swung a little bit too far to being very averse to that element of it. And that also, relates for me to the sort of fitness journey that you've been on, and that we're all on, really, whether we think about it or not, and our ability to reduce our risk by ensuring that we are physically prepared for the job. I mean, Matt Adams, funnily enough, has started to. I mean, it wasn't his, but he's the one that mentioned it, and it's the best quote I've probably had on the podcast in a long time. Is you can't be fit enough for a job that could kill you. I mean, when did you start focusing on this element of the job for you? Because you seem to have always had a bit of an athletic approach to your life.
Yeah, I've been lucky that I've always enjoyed sport. I've always enjoyed keeping fit, and then I just found that the fire service had a great outlet for it. The sports and social, so through the football teams, through the cricket teams, and then when I was getting too old for that, through the firefighting challenges, through the World Firefighter Games, through the World Police and Fire Games, that just opened another level because it introduces you to so many people from around the world.
When did you start learning the firefighter challenges?
I first went to one in 2000. That was the World Firefighter Games. So we took the football team to that and had the experience of the World Firefighter Games, which was great fun. And that stuck in the back. We tried to do a couple of others, but for circumstances that didn't work out. Then it got round to 2008. At that time I was a watch manager, and I had some younger firefighters on the watch and some fit ones, and I talked a couple of firefighters into going to Korea and give a toughest firefighter alive a crack. How hard could it be?
So what was the first TFA you did?
So that was it. First TFA was in Korea, and I pulled my hamstring briefly just before, as you do. I just overdone it. I don't know why I did, but so I hadn't trained going to it. I used to run orienteering as well, so I ran an orienteering race and it felt okay, as you sort of think, yeah, this does. And so I thought, yeah, okay, well, I've come all this way, I'm going to give it a crack. Yeah, got to give it a go. And I can remember that I had it all strapped up, and the very first thing, you hit the buzzer, picked up your 2 lengths of 70 to pull out, pulled off as hard as I could, and that was it, ping, my hamstrings. Anyway, I went through it and made it up, and then I said to my mate Andy, I said, well, that's it done. But everything else, the thing with a hamstring is that you can survive as long as you're not extending it. If it's all under compression, your hamstring holds together, sort of thing. It's not pleasant, but you know, the next stages are like the obstacle course, and the next stage, I couldn't get over the wall in that. The dummy flattened me because you just had to put it on your shoulders. So it was, I'm sure it was 85. I think it was like a 90 kg, but it flattened me. So as I was walking, it was slipping down my back, and I was getting more and more cramps. And in the end, I was almost frog walking to get it to things. It must have been, I wish I had a video. It would have been the most ridiculous video you've ever seen in your life. And then I came into that. The next one is carrying the 220 kilos up the flight of stairs. And I can remember getting up to the top of the stairs and just put the things in and took a breather. And the guy at the top of the stairs, he says, yeah, you've got a haul now. And I said, yeah, I know I've got a haul. I said, well, just give me a minute. Got my breath back. Yeah. Then hauled aloft, which again is shot. And I remember coming down to that and just pleading with Andy just to punch my arms or do something, because they were just rock solid. And yeah. And then the last one, the Brutish, it was the Daegu Tower, was the last tower. And that was something like, that was nearly a 10-minute climb. Yeah, as your final things. It was the tallest building in Korea. So
what an experience, though.
So yeah, and it was a great experience, and we did that, and we did some fun events, because we did 10-pin bowling, and we did 10-pin bowling because it was after the TFA, and we knew it would have air conditioning. And me and my mate Andy, we turned out, and we were just invest up, you know, in sports gear, and we were playing bowling against these Malaysian guys who were just proper into their bowling. They had bowling tops, they had that. And they said, haven't you got any bowling tops? And we said, no, this is it. I said, oh, you haven't got a team top? No. So they went off and they got us 2 Malaysian brand new tops, gave us the team tops, and then proceeded to give us an hour-and-a-half lesson in how to 10-pin bowl. You know, actually give us the lesson, say, you have to do this, you have to do that. It was brilliant, a great occasion, and they knew they were going through, so they just enjoyed themselves and gave us a free lesson.
So you mentioned at this stage, Story, you were a watch officer, watch manager. When did you first decide to go for promotion, and sort of how long did you serve in the back for?
I was thinking it was around about 15 years. I've been as a firefighter. I was so happy on the watch, and the watch was just a great place to be. And our leading fireman, he was going on. We knew it was going on, and I applied for that round of promotion because I thought there was a chance that I could get the job on my watch, and that's what I wanted, because I wanted to stay on the watch. But it would be even better. I was one of the older hands then. It'd be even better if I could stay on the watch as a leading firefighter. So that's why I did. I put in and I passed, and they offered me a job on Greenwatch on another station. So I just rang them up and said, "Look, thank you very much, but I bought a lottery ticket for the Red Watch job. If it's not available, just good luck to whoever gets it. I'm more than happy to stay as a fireman and carry on." And they went, "Hey, right, well, because they don't promote on there. That was the policy, I think." So they said, "Well, you're going to have to put that in an email and send it to us." So I went next door and I was writing an email, and then there was a phone call come back and said, "Look, we've had to think about it. The guy's happy to take Greenwatch Costume. You can have the job." So I said, "Right, let me think about that." Followed by a yes. And so I was very lucky, and I managed to get the job on my own watch. So I stayed for another 8 years, and then went for watch managers mainly because of the pension. And also I wanted to have the chance to run my own watch. I think as a watch manager, you're master of your own destiny.
Yeah.
You can, what you say, basically, always keep your head down. And so I went and did a temporary for 9 months, and then I was given a watch over Southampton, which was pretty alien to where we are down in Portsmouth. But we had a great laugh. Yeah.
What's the...
My role model as a manager is Sergeant Bilko, so if it could be anything like that, it was always going to be fun.
What's the argument for and against staying on the same watch for 15 or
20 years you did? I think the argument against is that you could go very flat. You could get too comfortable. I think probably just too familiar, too comfortable, possibly lose your edge or lose interest. And I think the argument for it is it all depends what that watch is like, and how you're developing yourself, and what you're bringing to the watch and how the watch is responding. Because if you're already with a group of mates and you're developing together, and you're looking to do like mine did, it's like another adage that we always used is, never leave a party you're having a good time for somewhere you think you might have a better time.
Yeah.
We were enjoying it, and I was doing a lot of my personal development outside of the fire service at the time as well, because I was doing youth work as my part-time work, and I was running youth education and outdoor education and things like that. So a lot of my sort of other skills were being learned outside, and I was just having a lot of fun in the fire service. I was still doing the job. I was still, because I was still interested, and and probably the right stage to go when I did. So that, and there was also a lot of change when I did move and moved off the watch. The watch was going through traumatic change because they were shutting one of the our neighbour station was being shut. We were being amalgamated into new watches. The trucks they'd taken away was coming back because we'd gone from 18 to 15, and then they went from 15 to 20, and so there was a lot of going on there, and I was probably quite lucky in that I just stepped away and took on a new watch and had a new role as a watch manager.
What sort of manager did you want to be when you shifted into a different watch? What were the sort of aspirations, the people that you'd learnt from, what you'd seen good managers do, and what you wanted to avoid, I suppose?
Mainly, the thing I enjoy, and that sort of came out, was the skills I was using in youth work, was that I wanted to encourage people to develop to the best that they could be. And I was lucky in some ways in that because I had time in when I got the watch manager, and there wasn't anyone on watch to gainsay as if in our time we did this. It was like I was around before your time, so yeah, I know what it was like. And we had a lot of younger people that were developing as well, so I had a great time developing them and helping them to become firefighters that they wanted to become, really. And so that's what I wanted. But so there was discipline, And right from the start, I will say, here is my line, and it's a pretty low line. And if you choose to be below that line, then we'll have words. If you choose to stay above that line, we're not going to have a problem, but I'm going to encourage you to be well above that line. Now, I can't make someone do more than their job, but I would encourage everyone to do it. I think we all want to be. My aspirations when I became a firefighter, I think the aspiration was that one day someone would say, he's a good firefighter. That's like the label that I would say most people should aspire to. You want someone to say, yeah, they're a good firefighter. They know.
How do you encourage that in somebody that knows they meet the minimum and they don't have to do any more?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult, isn't it? Because that is all that's required of them. So what do you do apart from encouraging them and show them that by pushing yourself a bit further, it's actually more beneficial to yourself? I can only talk from my own viewpoint because that's how I feel. Now, they might not feel that at all. And some people this is my day job. As soon as I leave the station, there is no fire service. I go back to my job. Everything is about the job. This is just what I earn my money at. I was lucky. I got for us on my recruits course, actually, on the passing out parade. Our fire authority leader of the fire authority, I remember he asked a question. He said, "Why did you want to join the fire service?" And I said, "Because I wanted to do a service, not a job. I wanted to do something that actually gave something and meant something, rather than just being in an office or making something or being in a factory like I come from." And for me, that's what it's about. It's making a difference every time we go out the door, every time we interact with the public. We're making some sort of difference. The way I view it is that everyone you meet, you should treat as if they're your mum, your dad, your best mate, your brother, your sister, your loved ones. That's the level of commitment you should be giving to that person. Because if my mum had been in trouble, I'd want to be the person to go and help them. And I'd want the person that goes to help them to view them as I would view them. And that doesn't matter where we find them in society, it doesn't matter what level, because if you had a brother that had sort of fallen away on hard times, and you turn up and you see them on hard times, it doesn't mean you treat them any different, because that's the way we're a service. Biggest change I've seen is our ethos is we're probably more of a business than a service now. It wasn't the service I joined. We're more corporate. I've seen it where we've gone to floods and things like that, and that's the end of our job. You've got insurance, get someone out, sort out the rest. Where before that, we would put the house back together the best we could, like it was our own house. We wouldn't leave it with 3 inches of water. We'd make sure that all goes. And the difference and the impact we can have is brilliant. I often tell a story that we got called to a shed fire once. When I was watch manager, 2 pumps, this guy had managed to set fire to a shed in his garden. So I was talking to him, I said, "How do you do this then?" He said, "Oh, trying to get rid of a bee's nest," and he was using a blowtorch. Set it light to the bee's nest, set it light to the shed. I said, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm trying to get the house together because tomorrow I've got a wake for my wife. She just recently passed away. And after the funeral, everyone's coming here and doing that." And I was thinking, right. So I had a word with the lads on there. So it was 8 of us there. And I said, "Look, are you all prepared to give up an hour, 2 hours in the afternoon? And we're going to help this guy out. And we'll get it back on nights, do what we like, sort of really, can't you?" So we said, "Look, you provide us with cups of teas and tell us what you want. And we've got, 16 hours of manpower just to come and do whatever you know." We sorted the garden out, sorted the house out. His daughter came round and sort of told us what to do. And that's going to have a massive impact than if we just put a shed fire out and walked away. And for me, that's what the service is about. When we're, police haven't got the time to do that sort of thing, have they? The ambulance haven't got time to do that sort of thing. What were we going to do? We're going to put the fire out, probably go back and have a cup of tea, and then leave a guy wondering he's got a burnt shed, a half-done garden, and he's burying his wife tomorrow. So for me, that's what our job is about. It's about that interaction with the public. It's how we can have a positive effect on the people around us, really. And so the more we can do, the better. And especially if we know that when we're going back, we don't want to sit down and go through a PowerPoint lecture for the next hour. If it keeps us out of that.
I agree, mate. I think it's hugely powerful. I think, when you say that, I always say to people, be the firefighter that your family think you are.
Yeah,
When you walk away
or
from
that
the
you would want to
station,
turn up.
you tell someone you're a firefighter, they've got this image of someone that's the moral compass of society, and they're a safe place for people and children to approach. And you're the sort of person that's got the training and the abilities to descend yourself into chaos. And as a team of firefighters, you're going to create calm and peace, and you're going to give that person reassurance on the worst day of their life.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the sort of game we play, isn't it? Because we can be at road traffic accidents that are traumatic, and they can be as traumatic for the firefighter as the person that's sat in the car. But the person sat in the car can't see that. At that time, they've got to see the calm, effective, the way out of their situation, not someone who walks in and opens the door and goes, "God," you know.
Yeah.
You're going to have someone that just looks like this is something that happens, and they've seen it happen. People survive many times before. So you've got to play that game, and then deal with that around the messroom table.
Yeah. I want to take a sharp left turn in something that came up in the notes that piqued my interest. Turning up in your underpants.
That's a saying of mine. So I always say at anyone that's joining, or the younger lads on the station, I said, you have got the easiest job in the world, because all you have to do is turn up in your underpants. Turn up in your underpants and everything else is done for you in the fire service. They're going to give you a uniform. They're going to give you, what you're going to do. They're going to tell you where you need to be and what you're going to do when you get there. I said, it's the easiest job, just turn up in your underpants. So when people are complaining about, this and that, and people do moan at the fire station. Yeah. And I missed the memo pad days, because we used to have, you couldn't send emails, so you sent a memo, didn't you? You had a pad and you wrote a note and who to and who from, and you put it in the internal mail, and that got to the person. And we'd always have one around the messroom table, so if anyone moaned, you're throwing a memo pad. It was a sign that if you don't like this job, just write your resignation on there. Get out the job and get someone in the job that's actually going to enjoy it and make a difference in the job. And most people are moaning because it's a way of passing time. It's not a real moan. But some people
very British thing.
Are what to moan.
Talk to me about re-engagement for people that don't know what that is.
Yeah, I was just very lucky. I fell through a hole. So as a watch manager, I was also lucky in the position that I knew my managers above, and I'd actually known them since they'd come in, and some of them through 30 years sort of thing. And I knew about re-engagement. So re-engagement at the time was the opportunity where you could retire, so that you could draw your lump sum and draw your pension, and you could come back and job share. Or you could come back and do the full job. But if you come back and did the full job, then you can't draw your pension. You can draw your lump sum, but not your pension, because you're not allowed to draw more money than your total wage. I also had someone on the station, Andy, who was on another watch. He had re-engaged, and he was doing full employment because he wanted his lump sum. So taking his lump sum, but he was doing 4 on 4 off full employment. So I could say to him, and I said, easy win, Andy, do you want to work half the amount of time for the same money? Because we could do a job share. That means that you can now pick up your pension and your half firefighter's wage, which would be equivalent of what you're earning now, but working half the amount of time, and I would be the other point of the job share. So we did all the paperwork, got that approved, and at the time, because they were getting rid of 64 firefighters, they said we'll only give you an 11-month contract, because they weren't really sure about keeping us on, and they said that with the climate it probably wouldn't be extended. But 3 months down there, just blessing from the world, I got a letter saying, due to the number of part-time contracts we got out there, we're looking to standardise, so you can either stay on your 11-month contract or you can go onto a standard part-time contract. And I rang them up and said, well, what does that involve? So basically it's open-ended. You just tell us when you're going to retire and we'll do that. So,
how long have you been doing that for now?
So that's 13 years now. My contract's turned into a 13-year project, and I'm on my second job share. So Andy retired, and I had to find another job share. And it just so happened that I knew someone on my original watch that was thinking about cutting down their hours or even leaving. And so I said to them, well, why don't you just get on board and do part-time? They weren't retiring, they were just a firefighter. They weren't in the pension, so it wasn't going to affect their pension. So we set up the job share down at Southsea. So I'm now back on the original watch I joined in 1986. Yeah, when I went to Southsea Red Watch.
That's got to be surreal.
So it is quite surreal.
You moved back from a watch manager to a firefighter in your re-engagement, I'm guessing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I dropped all rank. Yeah.
How was that for a mental shift and like the opportunity to get rid of all that responsibility, but still be able to coach and mentor people and probably even help out some of the managers and help develop them as well?
Yeah. I'd like to. I would always like to be in a position that I'd never feel I'm telling a manager what they're going to do. That's their watch, their management role. They're going to do it. If they ever want to come and for advice, I'm always open to help and give that. But I would never say unless I saw something that was dangerous or really stupid. But I haven't seen that from the managers I've had. And I'll be as supportive as I can, and I'm just enjoying just turning up in my underpants. That's all I've got to do now. I'm not responsible for anyone else. I'm responsible for my own actions. And yes, I've got a shared responsibility with the watch, and yes, I enjoy that, the mentoring bit, and I won't sit and watch the TV. It sort of bores me really, and I like to be busy on the station. So luckily we've got probationers, and I say, well, what do you want to do? And I sit down with them and go through. And it's good for me because I'm learning about equipment that's new to me.
Yeah.
I'm a very experienced 1990 firefighter, that's it. I'm not a very experienced 2020 firefighter because the stuff that's come in is only 2 years old. You know, the truck that we've got is only 2 years old, and there's stuff on there. I'm going, wow, you know, and I'm picking up the thermal image camera and there's buttons and the application of those buttons I didn't even know about, and I'm learning still like a kid in a candy store because they're giving me all these things to play with. I think the other thing is not to be forgotten is that how much a lot of us enjoy the job. We actually enjoy being in BA. That's the job. Being in BA, opening a door, seeing the red glow, and putting a fire out is what sort of gives you a buzz. And a lot of people talk about, oh, is it dangerous and that, and I equate it to being an adventure sport. No different if we were climbing or we were cave diving or we were skydiving. There's an element of risk. People die caving, there's people that die climbing, there's people that die skydiving, and there's firefighters that die on the job. And normally it's the unexpected in all those cases, and it will be something that will catch you out, and it might be failure of equipment, it just might be for us, you know, unexpected circumstances and a change, you know, like the building not operating like it's supposed to and things like that. But we do it because we like adventure sports. We do it because we like the buzz, we like adrenaline. And we've got the catch-22 where I don't wish harm on anyone. I'm never going to wish harm on anyone. But if that person is in that situation or there is that situation, I want to be involved.
Yeah. I want to be the sort of person that's got a skill set that is able to help in that situation when someone's having the worst day of their life.
Yeah.
Like, so when people say things about bravery and stuff like that, I'm like, it's actually significantly less riskier than potholing or something like that. We are theoretically very well trained. We're wearing very technical garments. We're using equipment that's tested every single day. So yes, we're playing a game with dire consequences, but really it echoes back to that conversation around proficiency, self-accountability, and holding yourself to a higher standard than personally I feel the services might hold you to, because you want to be a great firefighter that has we're never going to write on a debrief, we struggled to get the casualty out, or the fire, we lost 3 buildings because the firefighters were crap. We're not going to write that down, but you know if you're a good firefighter. Secretly, when you get in bed at night, no matter what your family think and no matter what everyone else thinks, you know if you're a good firefighter, hopefully, because you're standing shoulder to shoulder with people that may be outperforming you, that maybe, when that recruit steps out the room to go down to the truck, are you following them? Are you open to helping them learn? Or are you the someone that just says, bargain hunt's about to start in a minute or something like that? You've got to ask yourself if you're going to be the firefighter that you wish was there to mentor you when you were younger. Because if you say the recruit's rubbish, whether your recruit, it's like saying your kid's stupid. I'm like, well, how
We
often are you going
can't
to do homework with them?
complain about the new generation because we produce the new generation. So we can complain about the new firefighters because we produce the new firefighters. So.
Exactly. Get off your ass and go and do something about it. So, give us the sales pitch for as you've stepped back into this firefighter role. It's given you the ability to further step into your sporting passions and things like that. Give us a whistle stop tour of some of the events that you've been able to be part of, the sort of passion that you've found for this, the competitions that you've engaged with, and also some of the stuff you're trying to create and develop in your service as well.
Yeah, well, this year's been one of the probably most packed for the different varied events because I've done a few, but this year I've done most of them. So, as you know, I met you in Saudi where we all thought we got a spam email being invited to Saudi Arabia, all paid for, and
That was
what
surreal as hell, wasn't it, brother? That was just weird.
yeah, and that's one of the most impactful events. Going with what resources they threw into that and everything. What I really liked about it was that all the firefighters from all the different countries, we all shared that hotel, and it was the first time because having gone to World Firefight Games and that, I meet people, but in much more only in those specific sports that I'm doing, and only in the time events that I'm there. Where in Saudi there was a week of seeing all the Germans and a week of seeing all the Kiwis and a week of seeing all the Americans and a week. So you could make a lot better connections and you saw them around and they became more familiar with you because there were faces there that I'd known for years but never spoken to. I'd seen them in the background but never spoken, so it gave you the opportunity to do that and with the networking round. And then through that and meeting like the Americans and Jared and Joe, then I discovered about this.
You and Joe have developed quite a friendship.
Yeah, well, it was Joe's fault that I was over in Nashville just a few weeks ago because over there he talked to me about it and he said, if you come over, I will do a tandem with you, which I thought was incredibly brave of him because he's taken on a complete rookie to that thing, never done one.
I think you're being a little bit harsh on yourself there, but you're right, they do take it very seriously.
It's like taking a marathon runner and trying to make him a sprinter.
It is a sport in itself out there, isn't it? They have regionals all over the place.
I am so impressed with it, having spent a week at the World Championships and seeing the level that they're operating at. I am just overwhelmed. And for myself, there were 20 plus over 60 firefighters competing there. And they were just immense. And some of it is just off the chart. And I've had to redraw my lines of where I'm going to have to go to get anywhere near this. And it is a specific event, and I've got to learn the technicalities of that event. But even just looking at their fitness levels or what they can do, I'm more of a tank, as you see.
You're a knuckle you're a grunt. You like the hard work, but they really are apex predators.
And long high-rise climbs rather than sprint high-rise climbs. But I was lucky with Saudi at the beginning of the year. Then I went to the Europeans for the 5.
How did you do at Saudi? Let's not skip through this because I remember the awards evening at Saudi. Let's not undersell it, brother.
Well, I got the silver in the high rise.
Yes, you did.
And so
that was 20 floors, wasn't it? As quick as we can.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was something around there.
Beautiful building as well, wasn't it? We went there in the dead of night.
Yes, yeah. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning start, wasn't it, or something like that. It was a crazy early morning start before it all warmed up. Yeah, and it was a beautiful building as well. And I hadn't done stairs for a very long time. I was holidaying in Sri Lanka at the time with the things, and so they flew me from Sri Lanka to Saudi and then home again. But so stairs were a little bit of a shock to me. The TSA, I was, luckily I was familiar with, and so Joe won the stairs, and he smashed me on the stairs by probably something like 50 seconds, I think. So, and then the TFA, and Steve, who won it, he was the original 1990 toughest firefighter. Like, he is such a hard nut to crack. And I
Yeah, we had Steve on the podcast. Steve from Australia, isn't he?
From New Zealand.
New Zealand, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's
Awesome bloke.
He's awesome, absolutely awesome. And I first met Steve, though not really a lot, but in Sydney 2012, and that was the first time I saw Steve doing the toughest firefighter alive. But yeah, incredible athlete. So he had saved himself all week and performed on the day. I was just lucky in the experience of having a TFA, and Joe hadn't done a TFA. And even though Joe is stronger, faster, fitter than me, the wall is the equaliser there. And
he's a big ass wall as well.
And
what was it? 12? No, it wasn't 12 foot. Was it 10-foot wall?
It's 3 metres, isn't it? So yeah, so it's just under 10-foot wall.
Yeah,
and it wasn't made easy,
but it's still a hell of a lift.
Yeah, and they made the foot bar low. I think I said when we saw it, and I spoke with Steve about it, I said, this is going to catch a lot of people out, because a lot of people think they're going to get on that bar and muscle up, and you aren't going to. You need to have a technique that takes you over with the rope.
Yep.
Just in case. But as it
happens, a lot of firefighters, unfortunately some of the female firefighters as well, if you're not tall enough, you really are pulling on that rope to get yourself up to the bar before you can even muscle over it, because it really is, like you say, that first wedge is low down, which puts you under the illusion that you can then springboard off it, but it's so low that actually you've still got a lot of the wall to go once you stood on it.
Yeah, and unless you are either very strong or very tall, you're going to struggle on that. But then, as I say, I also knew what was coming, because I didn't rush to it. I just made sure I've not done the wall enough times to know what I need to do the wall, sort of thing. So that's where the experience helped. And it just rained, and that caught Joe out, and yet immensely Joe got over that wall. If you watch that, that is a moment of the games. Just watching the tenacity of, it must have been something like the 4th or 5th attempt. And normally after 3 attempts, no one is making. And after 4 or 5th attempts, he's made that wall, and he's still made the time. Because if you take a penalty in the TFA, you're out the game completely.
Yeah, there's some big penalties.
Yeah, so I managed to steal the silver on that, and so came away with 2 silvers. And then, because I thought, right, I'm going to have a go at this firefight challenge, the hardest 2 minutes in sport, as they say. I thought I'd better go and give it a go, so no better place than going to Poland for the European Championships as your first attempt. And my God, was that a shock. Under air, and and it's the tower. Yeah, the tower is the killer. Again, having never been in that tower, never tried to step in, picking up the 20 kilos flattened me. So I can normally run a tower, put the 20 kilos, I was like a snail going up there. I finished it. But also unfortunately there was no over 60, so I was competing with 55s, and only 5, I think, were going through to the finals day, so there was no way I was going to make a cut for finals day. But I did get a tandem with Mickey. So Mickey
Joseph.
So we did an over 55 tandem, and we made it to the finals day, even though we had a bit of a problem with changing the air bottle on the qualifier, but we still got time to qualify. And our game plan was that someone was going to drop their bottle somewhere through, but they don't put it on properly and it falls out. That was our game plan, and then we could sneak a bronze in. As it was, we got a bronze because the 2 fastest German teams faced each other, and they were pushing each other, and one of the German teams fell with a dummy just before the line.
Yeah. And
couldn't get it over, so we came in and snuck with a bronze there. That was good. But to see the event, see the other lads, Don was there and Chrissy was there, and it was
amazing.
All good fun. So it was great fun again. And then after that, we had the British Firefighter Challenge as well up in Liverpool, which was really good. Yeah, I enjoyed that, and training was paying off, because that was the fastest I've run forever.
I think that's the best BFC we've ever done,
It was, really good. Location was good.
Incredible event. Really was well put together. That was well executed. Some really high performing athletes.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was good to see. And again, everything becomes a bit of a reunion the more people that you know as well, and the longer you know them, which is good. And then after that, we went to the World Firefighting Games in Denmark and did another TFA.
You came to the Welsh as well, though, didn't you?
Oh, yes, I came to the Welsh. Yeah, yeah. So that was, and yeah, I said to Dom, I don't know how many souls they sacrificed to get the weather for that, because Swansea is never blue sky.
It was another incredible day, wasn't it?
Brilliant, wasn't it? Yeah, and that was a really well run event. Yeah, they do such a good job there, and so that's a great one.
Across the
To go.
UK and the Cheshire and the British and the Welsh now, having done a lot of international events myself and yourself included, what do you think it takes to get us to that next level? Because we really are performing at a high level in terms of a UK standard now. These events are really, really well organised, but there is something different about the way that the Americans do them. And I also think that these are just such a great opportunity as a recruitment platform for people to come and see, the very best of the British Fire Service. The Liverpool was very well attended. The Welsh was very well put together. We're starting to see a growth of events in the UK. Where do you think we're at, and sort of what do you think we need to be doing to continue this growth in the Firefighter Challenge community in the UK?
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing. I think we are growing, and it's still quite fledgling, especially now diversifying to regionals. That's the next step, is to almost have we are going to have a calendar of regional events that people can go to, people can aim for, and the way you still look, there's a different way I think that other nationalities train. Maybe I don't know what it is in that, but there's some berserkers out there, aren't there? You look at the Czechs, the Lithuanians, the Latvians, the Polish. They're all mad for it, but I think they have like training days, and that's being talked about. I think people will get together, and I think it's building steadily on the foundations that the British Firefighter Challenge have put together. They've got a firm foundation there, and I think building sensibly and steadily on that, we'll see everything else like coming up. So once there is a calendar and things get more formalised, it'd be great fun to be able to go around the country.
So talk to us post-British. What events were next?
So that was in Denmark for the World Firefighting Games. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I had fun at the World Firefighting Games because I did the stair run, which is basically a cross country with some stairs in it. And so that's quite brutal on my cross country days. I used to run cross country quite well, but those sort of days are over now. I don't like running anything that's over like 400 metres. So. Yeah, but I did that. Then I had 3 days of athletics because I got into athletics when my football career was finishing, and I still wanted to be involved. Going to the World Police and Fire Games, every event that you enter cost you at the time $50. And so if I was going to go to the athletics, which I'd done a little bit of, and do 4 events, that was going to be $200. And I think I was fairly merry at one evening, and I was looking at it, and I discovered the decathlon, and being inspired obviously by Daley Thompson from my era. The decathlon was always looked brilliant, and it was 10 events over 2 days, and it was $50. So I got 10 events for 50. It's bargain, and so I thought I'd put that down because I wanted to do something more than the ultimate firefighter and the stair race that I always do.
Yeah.
And I woke up the next morning realising that maybe I've got to now find someone to teach me how to do decathlon. I was very lucky because down in Portsmouth we had 2 very good decathletes, Steve and Adam. Adam was on the verge of going for a Commonwealth Games, and Steve had just won the over 35 Masters, British Masters decathlon. So, and they were great at training, and they took me on as a project. And they said, well, we aren't going to be able to teach you all, we're going to teach you how to survive a decathlon, so you get through your first decathlon. But that's where I then had to learn to pole vault. So at the age of 53, I entered my first pole vault competition. And I had to learn the hurdles, discus, javelin, all the throws and all the jumps. I got into that as well. And that really escalated my fitness because I learnt to train properly and a lot smarter than I was training. I was just beasting out stuff for the toughest firefighting things, but now I was learning how to train. I was really learning the advantages of a proper warm up and a cool down, and all those
That is
sort
the
of
big
things.
fear for people, as they're getting older, is avoiding injuries and just surviving training. What's your
Yeah.
approach for training now?
Well, I still train, but I'm much more aware, I think, of my body and my limits. I think I've done the strains, I've done all the bits enough to know when my body is getting close to maximum. I can't hold a maximum fitness, so I look to peak, and I'm fairly good at peaking for where I'm aiming for. So the rest gets sort of a little bit disregarded. The rest are testers. So when I went to the British Firefighting Challenge, my peak was going for Nashville because I really wanted to get Joe on the podium for the tandem. Fortunately, we didn't do it. We fell by about a second. I'm so gutted because Joe could have picked anyone and he would have been on a podium there. Yeah. But yeah, we had a good run at it. But yeah, it just shows the competition that was there was immense as well. Yeah, so that was my peak. So now, if I try and hold a peak for too long, I'll just break. If I try to hold my intense training for too long, something will break, and then it sets you back. And I've always said I'd rather turn up 90% fit and injury free than 99% fit but with a niggle.
Yeah.
You don't want that as you get older. And I also, one of the things I quote is that when you're older, it's not about your fitness, it's about how you manage your injuries. Because we've all got prior injuries of some sort, and it's how we are managing those and recognising those and forgetting that ego stupidity of this will be all right. I can do it. I can train through this. It's like taking the time out from doing that, and also investing in yourself. I had a conversation with Mickey because his back's not very good at the moment, and I said, well, if your car blows an engine, you think nothing about spending £2,000 and putting a new engine in your car if you have to, but we sort of go £50 for a massage. Well, that sounds a lot. It's like, well, we've only got the one body. You might as well invest in it to keep it going as best you can for as long as you
So
can.
what does some of your self-care and managing those injuries look like now, and what's sort of a standard training week?
I try and do 3 hard training sessions a week, and the intensity of that training lesson will depend on where I am in my training cycle. And on my training cycles, when I do them, I do like 3 hard weeks and then 1 week that's half intensity, so it's a recovery week. In between, I have active recovery, so that will be things like mobility sessions and stretches and things like that. It'll be something that's not taxing at all, give my body a chance to repair, and I'll have a day off in there somewhere as well. So that will take care of like 6 days of the week, and I'll just make up the other day. But I do try and sort of formalise it, and as I go, I would like condition, do strength, do technical, and normally my last bit is all about speed, because I still believe speed is key. Speed is about power, application of power, isn't it? So it's, I say, my last 4 weeks will be all on a speed program really, and because I've got to then believe that my strength training, I'm not going to suddenly get stronger in the last 4 weeks. I'm going to taper in the last 10 days anyway, just so that I'm fully prepared. And that's how I've been working, and it seems to work for me. So I think you've got to find your own, because I ice bath and things like that, and especially doing a decathlon after the first day. I don't think I'll survive the second day if I can't ice bath in between the two. But then I know others that from the British Masters Athletics who don't get on with ice bathing at all. So they don't find them beneficial at all. So
Do you have a little ice bath set up, or do you just manually
no,
do it in the bath?
yeah, I do it in the bath. Yeah, and do that. Yeah, but yeah, I'm not too. And sometimes it's just a cold bath. Sometimes it's not even ice. It's just as cold as I can get it to get in, and it helps in my training, because what I do in my training is that if I train and I get that nice training ache, then I reward myself with a nice warm bath and a soak. If I train and it feels like I've twinged or on the verge of hurting myself, then I have to ice bath. So it sort of teaches me not to train to the point where I hurt myself, because I know I can have a warm bath instead of an ice bath.
That ironically becomes a different level of self-discipline, doesn't it? Because I've fallen foul of just continuing to train, and then something snaps, and that seems to be a 1 year or 18-month cycle that I keep going through. I think
Yeah,
I've gotten better at it in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm being a bit kinder
and
to
it
myself,
took me a long
ironically.
time. Yeah, I was doing it in football for a long time, and it would go. And then it was only through the athletics that I learnt it was actually not weak hamstrings that was causing the hamstring. It was weak glutes, and my hamstrings were trying to take over the job of my glutes, and so they were then overloading, and your hamstring goes because your glutes not doing the work it's supposed to be doing. So
Mm.
changing the training and strengthening the muscles around rather than the specific muscle was sometimes what you have to do. Yeah, so there was lots of stuff like that. So yeah, and I mean, we learn a lot more about physiology and sports science and things like that, and nutrition and sleep. I guess it's all those things, isn't it? So yeah.
Talk to me about, there was something that came up in the notes. There for the grace of God.
Now, what was that about? I'm going to have to
I
look at
don't
my
know.
notes.
It implies a near miss of some form.
Yes, yeah. So that's what it is. Yeah, because number of times. I mean, how lucky are we sometimes? And there are a number of occasions, that have happened to me and to other people that, yeah, there, but the grace of God, we would be in a similar situation. There's a number of people that, have been in backdrafts and the wrong end of the backdraft. We got sent in with my best mate and we were told fire in the front bedroom, and went upstairs, absolutely smoke log hot, crawled through to the front room, and searching the front room, couldn't find any source of fire, but it was hot in there. And I was just on the radio outside saying, "Can you confirm the fire's in the front bedroom?" And they come back, and just as they said, "No, wait, when the fire is in the rear bedroom." Rear bedroom must have flashed over because the heat came down, put us on the floor. And I'm saying to my mate, "It's behind us," and we've had to crawl down the corridor to get back to the stairs, and down the stairs to get under it all, and then go back up and turn right and go into the rear bedroom, which ironically I had my arse in as we turned at the top of the stairs. Didn't even know it. And then we put fire out, full involved fire in the back bedroom. And they said outside that when it went, it came out the front of the house and filled the road up for about 30 yards either side of the house. It was, I don't know what's just happened there. And then when we put the fire out, we got told that in the cupboard in that room as well, there was a nice tin box that had a gun in it with ammunition as well. So
Wow.
luckily it hadn't gone in and involved any ammunition or anything in there, because that would have made it interesting if the bullets started banging off in the fire.
There is so many of those situations, isn't it, where you do
Yeah,
think,
as a young firefighter, we turned up at a carpet warehouse thing, and it was going like the clappers, and it was a winter's day, and I got a branch off, and I was having fun outside, and I was doing a break down the side, but the pump operator called over, as they do. I had to put it down to go and get more water, because the hydrant he found, it was frozen over, so I went searching for it. When I got back to my branch, the branch was melted and the hose was gone because it had flashed over and come straight out the side of the building where I was. So had I not run off for the hydrant, I would have been stood there as something, whatever it was, that flash would have come straight across us. So it's just a luck of the draw somehow, I lucky thing, but it would have been quite a shock when something like that sort of envelops you, doesn't it? Even if it's briefly.
Jesus, yeah.
Especially when you're only still in your plastic leggings.
That would have been a very different story.
Yeah, so that sort of thing. Yeah, it's and yeah, there's mates of mine. They told me they went into a hotel on the seafront, and they just dragged their hose 45 because it was going like the clappers, and they got up to the 4th floor to the door where the fire was supposed to be, and they managed to drop the hose because they brought it up the internals of the staircase. They managed to drop the hose as they were getting to the door, and it went back down the stairs. So they went back down the stairs to retrieve it, and had to bring the hose all the way up to the door and make an entry. And when they opened the door, there was no floor on the 4th floor. So whether there was a floor when they would have been there the first time,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it could have been that they made an entry through that door and then the floor would have gone. And but for the fact that the hose disappeared, it took them another 10-15 minutes to make entry. At least by then the floor was gone, and quite safe. So you have those I think that, there's like loads of stories from people all over that are going to have experiences of where just through being lucky rather than any sort of skill or yeah, it's
When do you, given the age you're at now, when do you think you retire? Because when I was reading in notes around your fitness plan for pension, your pension fitness plan, it's being fit enough to enjoy your retirement. I mean, when do you envisage retiring, and how do you think you've set yourself up for retirement, and maybe advice to other people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are approaching that?
well, I've always felt very blessed, not only in the job that I've done, because it's not been a job. I've enjoyed every day I've gone to work. But now I got the golden ticket to get the re-engagement. I mean, they shut that down pretty quick after it was only a small window. And I do feel I'm definitely semi-retired, doing more. And I don't know how I only ever survived with just 4 days off, not 12 days off. But so I've been practicing for like 40 years. It's you're on a pre-retirement plan, I think, from the day you join the fire service, but you've got to enjoy every minute that you're still in the job. And I've always said that as long as I can turn up not feeling that I'm being carried and not feeling that I'm an embarrassment to the watch, then I'll carry on as long as I'm enjoying it. And I don't know how long that will be. And it also depends what else happens around me. If other opportunities happen, that I just want to go and enjoy life. But at the moment, it suits me, and a couple of years would suit me more. I definitely want to get my 40 years in. I can see that as a landmark. So I'd like to be able to say, yes, I've done my 40 years in the fire service, and it's all operational as well. I've always been on fire. And that's the thing with promotion. And people said about developing yourself and things like that. But I never wanted to move away from an operational position, and I couldn't have taken a fire safety job. I looked at training. Good mate of mine, he was head of training at the time, and I was going for my BA instructors course, because he said, come up here and join us at the academy. And I said, well, I'm on a course for 2 weeks, so I'll see how it feels for 2 weeks, and I'll let you know. Well, day one was all right, because we do a day, but travel was going across the motorway. It was okay, but you could manage it. Day two was okay, again, because you do 2 days. Day three, it was like, why am I getting up this early in the morning? I'm not. I'm getting up 3 days in a row. And day four, it's like, oh crumbs, I'm getting up in the morning again. I don't even get a lie in for the second day. And then day five came, and it was like, why am I working today? It should be my day off. And it went, no, this isn't for me. No, definitely not. And I think I'd miss just what's always enjoyed is the fact that when you're on a station, you can be doing the most mundane thing in the world. You can be mopping the appliance room floor, and the next minute the bells are gone, and you can be doing the most exciting thing that you've ever done in your life, sort of thing. So you've always got that opportunity for that to happen. And even if it's not happening as much now, and I do, I'm not as hungry for a job as I used to be when I was in my 20s, but you're still going to have to beat me off with a large stick when I've got a hose reel in my hand and BA. So yeah, I'll still fight you for the branch going into a fire, because that's the enjoyment of the job. But having said that, that's probably a little untrue now, because I'll give it, because it's the opportunity for the younger lads to learn, and I can't be that selfish, even though I really want to be. Yeah. So yeah, it's just. But I think retirement, you've got to have plans ahead. I've always planned and done quite well in, I think, manoeuvring the world around me, or me in the world that's around me, for my benefit, and that's how re-engagement happened. That's how I've managed to get my leading fireman's job on the same watch. That's how I managed to get watch managers that not only helped with my pension, but I had an awful lot of fun with. And I think the same with retirement, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We've seen that happen to so many people. We've all made plans, but everybody that dies today had plans for tomorrow. So, I just want to make the most of what I do every day, and then have the plans for what I want to do in the future. And they're quite numerous. Yeah, I'm going to enjoy myself. But part of it is keeping fit, because if I can't do that, I can't do the things I enjoyed. So I went to Nashville and I had a week running around up towers and dragging stuff about and dragging dummies and being in fire kit and having a laugh with a lot of really good firefighters. And then I had 2 weeks in Costa Rica surfing, doing what I want. And I couldn't spend 3 hours in the water surfing if I wasn't fit enough to do it. Yeah, and I would hate to sit on a beach now watching surfers and not be able to take the board out and paddle out and make it through to the back and enjoy that. So it's all about that. I intend to be surfing for as long as possible. I intend to be doing athletics, masters athletics for as long as possible. In that, there's so many role models. That's where I get my fitness role models, from the British Masters athletics. You see people that are like 80 and performing, and it's like, this is incredible. There is hope for everyone. You see someone, just go on YouTube, 100-year-old 100-meter world records, and you watch people sprinting at 100 years old.
Incredible.
Yeah, and we're teaching people how not to fall over at 70. Yeah, well, we're even doing it at 60.
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
You've got to start with that in mind, haven't you?
Yeah, and that was the bit where we put down the pension plan. We invest in that, even if we're not thinking. We don't think about our fire service pension when we join. I never thought about that at the end, but it's such a good thing that I'm benefiting from now. And so is the fitness. In your 20s, you're investing in your future self, and you're investing all the way to 40, and then you're maintaining that. And I think it's really important to have that vision as a long investment, and it's every day. You just got to put a little bit in every day. And once you get to 50, if you're not declining, you're winning. So you just view it. That's how I like viewing it, as a fitness pension, because every bit that you invest in as a younger person, and you maintain that investment, you will reap the rewards. Some people will be unlucky because you won't make it, same as a lot of people. For those, as you do, at every stage, you're reaping the reward because you're doing.
You've got to stack the deck in your favour, haven't you? You've got to stack the deck in your favour. I'd rather be prepared for an opportunity and not get it than, you get these opportunities and you get an opportunity to do another job or stay a few more years or get invited to something. You've got to be physically and mentally and financially capable of doing it. So set yourself up for success and stack the deck in your favour is what I always think.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, if you can do it, do it.
I want to be respectful of your time, but I'd be remiss if we didn't speak firstly about Lifeline for Lauren and the Full Monty.
All right.
But also about the new competitions that we're putting together.
Yeah, so Lifeline for Lauren was a sad time and a special time, really, because Lauren was the daughter of my best mate in the fire service, and she had a terminal illness that was diagnosed when she was 3. She finally passed away when she was 14. And because of it was a degenerative disease, so she would, through the years, she would lose her hearing, lose her speech, lose her ability to walk and things like that. So we were looking to raise money to help Stu and the family so they could adapt the house and do that. And also we wanted money to go towards the just trying to find a cure for the diseases, because at the moment there isn't, so just for the research. So we came up with an idea that we would do a Full Monty style show for charity, and I knew the people to pick, and we were going to put on a ladies' night that was all firefighters in there, and it was a very fun and special. We had some hurdles to overcome. It was sorry, I got them
all right.
Hurdles to overcome, because at one stage they were saying, well, we've talked to our solicitors in the service, and if you go ahead, you could be facing disciplinary action and losing your job. And I was like,
they're intense things to be discussing.
I can't see how that's going to happen when the papers take up 12 firefighters dismissed for doing a charity show for a terminally ill child. I said, how are you going to And I said to them, so we had a discussion about how we could manage it, and so the brigade were happy with it, and we sort of did it very much on the down low. We weren't allowed to publicise it and things like that, but we had 500 tickets to sell, and we sold them all within a week. And basically the premise was that they had a table of 10. You'd come in, women would come in, and they'd get waited upon by a topless firefighter in just his boots and leggings, who would take their money, take the order, bring it to the table while the show went on. I contacted some dancer choreographers from the local college that used to be the school that I went to, and said, look, have you got anyone that would help us choreograph and make a show up? And they did, and then I got the firefighters and I said, look, this is what we're looking to do, are you up for it? And they said yes. I knew which firefighters to pick, but then people came on board, other stations. And we were very strict, because we said, look, they're paying money for this, they're paying good money for this, so we're not going to have it as a soap opera, we're going to have it as a show, so it's going to be a standard, so you're going to have to perform it for us with our choreographers, and we'll tell you whether you're good enough, and I'll be ruthless enough to say, no, you can't, or we'll give you the choreographer to work with you to get it to the standard. So yeah, so we did this, and we put on these ladies' nights, and we run 5 in total over the years, sort of every year. But the very first one, I mean, it was super scary, because they did do the full Monty, although we told the brigade that they were going to have in their hats, you know, when at the end they put it, we were saying they were going to have a spare pair of like G-string pants, and they were going to throw those out. But I said to the lads, look, if you get to that stage and you don't do the full Monty, they're going to rip the place down. Yeah, you know, that's what they've come here for, and that's what they paid the money for. It's yeah, up to you. Are you up for it? And yeah, of course. So they did, and we said,
how long ago was that?
So this was in 2000, around about 2000. So it's probably
You'd never get away with that now.
98 to 2000. No,
Not a chance in hell.
not a chance. But it was the best thing that ever happened for the fire service fitness, because for months before, every firefighter, especially if you're waitering or you're on the show, everyone was in the gym, because they were trying to get a body that looked respectable in front of like 500 women. So yeah, and in the end we ended up raising something like £75,000 for the charity, and that paid for Lauren and a wet room and a bedroom and everything that she needed around the house. And as I say, just you can imagine the stories that would go along with it. And I've got pictures, and I said I'd never release the pictures until the last person had retired, so it didn't affect anyone's career. Because one of those people in the 6 people in the full Monty, one of them ended up as a chief fire officer. Imagine the damage that we could have done with releasing certain photographs.
Well, you know, come on, let's get a grip sometimes.
But they were great.
Get it. I get the nervousness and the culture issues that we're facing in the fire service now, but give the people what they want. Everyone,
there's only myself now that's still lingering in the job that was involved in the show. But yeah, as I say, yeah, great times, really fun times. And
I'd love to get hold of one of those photos and use it for the
video.
And we'll make sure we blur out anything that's not.
I need to find someone who can turn old video tapes into MP3s or whatever.
In a VHS form.
Yeah, it's in VHS form. Yeah, I've got my recruits course in VHS form as well, so I need to get that off as well.
Yeah. Put it on your VHS player. Take a picture of the pause it and take a picture. Send that to me. We'll see if we can use it. We'll find something to do, mate. I've absolutely loved that. I don't want to skip over anything. Is there anything we've failed to mention, or from someone that's done nearly 40 years in the fire service? Is there any kind of
the last bit we were going to mention?
The competition
is the South Coast.
Talk to me about this. Talk to me about getting amongst it.
We're jumping on the bandwagon of regionals and wanted to have a regional down here on the South Coast. So. Yeah, the watchers really bought into it, and we're putting together an event.
What's this event going to look like? How's it going to differentiate? What's it going to be made up of?
Again, it's not going to look a lot different from the other events. It's not going to have a tower like footage, because that's the biggest resource, I think, and issue of putting an event on. So to simplify it, we take that tower section out, so it won't have a going up 3 floors and a hall aloft type thing. But it will have most of the other aspects of a firefighter challenge. I'm still trying to work on one of them to see if I can I can get it in, but we've got to work our way around that.
When's
But
the
that
event
will
going
be
to be?
coming. I can't say much, but we've got the date for the 21st of June. So it's hopefully going to be the longest day of the year, or around about the longest day of the year. And we're going to hope that we get some good weather. But we've got a great location. We've got the Guildhall Square, so it's got the iconic Guildhall right next to it.
Well,
And
I'll be
it's
there,
got a few other
100%.
excellent, because we need a mic person, obviously. So.
Well, you struggle. You'll always find plenty of people to come and do the runs, but for better or worse, there's seems to be less eager people to be the idiot on the microphone. But I always think, people train so hard for this sort of stuff that it's nice to have someone on the microphone that can celebrate the firefighters. Give them a shout out. Give them encouragement going through it. So, 100%, brother. I'll commit to being there. I'll take the mic, and I'm sure Sarah or another member will come and make a real event of it, mate. It's really important to give the
Yeah,
support. We've
yeah,
done the same for the Cheshire and the Welsh and the British, and we'll absolutely do the same for you.
yes, yeah. I should say that I met one of the lads who did the Cheshire from New Zealand as well over in Nashville. He had the Cheshire badge on his tunic, and he showed us that. So I got a picture of that, and I think I sent it to the Cheshire lads and things. So yeah, so it's making an impact
It is,
around.
mate. Yeah, people forget how big the virtual event really gets, because that's where they have the real great USP, is that people from all over the world compete in the Cheshire. It really is. I love that each event in the UK now is really starting its own niche for itself. And yeah, I think it's going to be incredible to see your new event as well and put that in the calendar for everybody. So we'll put some details for that underneath this. But we've spoke for probably 2.5 hours easy here, brother. And I know we could go for another hour or so, but I'm going to go and grab my daughter from school. Really, really loved catching up with you, mate. You've been on my hit list for a very, very long time. You're certainly one of those people that inspires me to continue on this journey and to continue to challenge myself, and never forget that, as difficult as it might seem today, when I see Alan rocking up to an event, it really holds me accountable to putting in a shift. So I really appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah, well, yeah, long may that last, hopefully.
Send my love to the family and the watch, mate, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, that's awesome.